Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 61, Matsumoto Rangiku, Beautiful Broken Soul. Third-person POV. Orium stood amongst the Espada in the middle of Talbumasuk's throne room. He glanced down at her from high above, sitting upright with his hands on his armrests. He smiled down at the busted teenager welcomingly. "So nice of you to accept my humble request for you to come here," Talbumasuk said, knowing full well that by humble he meant forced, using the death of your friends as blackmail. "I do hope you'll enjoy your stay here, in New Orium." "What crap is this?" Baragan barked. "You deployed forces to the world of the living just to capture this one girl. It's all a part of the plan left by my sensei. Rest assured I know what I'm doing," Talbumasuk said with a grin. He couldn't strike Baragan as efficiently as he would any other Espada because of how the former king of Hueco Mundo controlled time around him. There was tension building between the two Arrancar lords, a tension that Talbumasuk knew he would have to cut. "Besides, our losses are minimal now that we have the girl here with us," Talbumasuk said. "Oh?" Baragan asked disbelievingly. "Indeed," Talbumasuk said. "Orium, please do a demonstration for my disgruntled companion. Please restore Halibal and Grimjo's arms and undo the damage to the rest of the Arrancar that were injured in battle." "Yes, sir," Orium said. "Bah!" Baragan scoffed. "Healing Star K and the others I could buy. But how can she restore Yami, Grimjo and Halibal? No healer can restore what does not exist. The Tessera and the Sexta's limbs were left behind and Yami barely has a face left. Yami was very much alive, but Tessai had performed cosmetic surgery on the Espada's face with his Kido, so he had a bandage wrapped all around his head. He couldn't talk or see anything. It was lucky for Talbumasuk indeed that he had managed to hold on long enough for medical attention to get to him." Baragan watched Orium approach Grimjo, Halibal, Yami and the others. Soten Kishun. The two Shunshunrika, Ayam, and Shuno, flew out from Orium's hairpins and she created the reversing shield around the Arrancar that had battled her friends. "I reject," she said solemnly. "What do you think you're doing, girl?" Avirma shouted. "Didn't you just hear His Majesty Lord Baragan? You can't heal them, so don't even." Baragan and his fraction became wide-eyed as Grimjo and Halibal's arms began to be restored and all of the other injured Arrancar began to be healed as well. "Try. What sorcery is this?" Charlotte gaped. "This is certainly beyond the point of healing." Baragan gripped his bone throne in anger as he glared at Orium's gift. "Indeed," Talbumasuk affirmed. "Her powers are similar to the temporal regressive abilities of my Zancudo. Ulquiorra believes such a power might even be considered such, or perhaps even spatial regression, or a little bit of both. But," Talbumasuk rose to his feet, "it is in fact neither. By mine and Sale's calculations, Miss Inu's ability has the power to reject all sorts of phenomenon. From the surveillance video I hijacked from the 12th Division's mainframe, it appears that her powers are fueled by 3 traits of personality: compassion, protective instinct, and aggression. Based on such an analysis, it is safe to assume that this Soten Kishun, which rejects the fate of a desired area, is built upon her compassion, her most esteemed quality. Protective instinct, while not quite as high, is still prominent within her, making her shield durable, but not omniscient. Her aggression is rather low, only spiking in rare instances, so her attack power is rather low. It's such a strange power, but of course I like the strange and mystical." Talbumasuk smirked. "They're interesting. Ridiculous. No mere human could have such a power. It's absurd." Baragan scoffed. "If it's absurd, then what do you call this?" Grimjo asked and sent a bala with his restored arm into Avirma's face. "Are you looking for a fight, Jaeger Jacques?" Baragan asked. "Because I will give you one." "Stop." Talbumasuk stomped his foot. He raised his Ryotsu. It was so mighty that all of the Espada paid attention to him. Orium nearly gagged. Ulquiorra casually stepped in front of her to shield her from his master's Ryotsu. They needed her alive. She was no good to the Espada dead. "I will have order." Talbumasuk glared. "Yes, sir," Grimjo said, glancing away as he stuck his hands in his pockets. Humph. Baragan plopped his ass back in his seat. Yami, realizing he was no longer in any pain, ripped off his face bandages. He blinked a few times and then looked at the pale Cuarto Espada. Hey Ulquiorra. Yes Yami. Ulquiorra asked. Oh my, here we go, and to think it was so quiet just a few minutes ago. I can see. Yami declared with a big grin. Yes, Yami. Yes you can. Ulquiorra sighed. Yami then noticed Orium. Who's the kid? He rubbed his cranium. Weren't you listening to anything just now? Ulquiorra asked. That's a new Orium, our guest. We've brought her here as per orders from Atramir-sama. We did. Yami asked. Okay, I did. You got yourself nearly killed in battle again. Ulquiorra stated. Oh yeah, that's right. Yami remembered fighting Tessai. Where the hell is that glasses-wearing bastard? I need a rematch. He stomped his foot and clenched his fist in anger. Patience Yami, Talbumasuk said, putting his hands behind his back, all in good time. You shall have your revenge and your fun when the time comes, but for now all of you should retire to your quarters and go about as if everything were normal, at least for now. He turned and began to walk behind his throne. Ulquiorra, please show our guest to her room. Yes sir. Ulquiorra complied. Let's go, woman. He said to Orium. Yes. She complied and followed the Cuarto Espada out as all of the Espada began to file out of Talbumasuk's throne room. Orium was escorted to a room with two white walls, a third wall with a door, a white ceiling and a small single window with 3 vertical bars on it like the kind seen in jail cells. There were green tiles on the floor. There was a bathroom connected to the room and a bed and a couch inside. Orium stared out up at the moon. Her eyes were like a little lost puppy looking at a person wanting to take it home. It was as if the room, when she had entered it, had a sign of it that said, "Abandon all hope." Orium sighed. I was told stay quiet here, but there's nothing for me to do. She dropped to her knees. I'm so hungry. Orium began to think what she had left behind and how she had gotten roped up into this situation. Perhaps it's for the best. She thought to herself. Tatsuki-chan and Kurosaki-kun can be happy together if I'm here, or whoever it is Kurosaki-kun was dreaming of. Orium put a hand to her lips, remembering the kiss. Is it selfish of me to desire more of that? I know there was no way that he knew that it was me, or maybe he mistook me for someone else, but I want to be with Kurosaki-kun. Orium's expression changed from sorrow to irritation as her red heart began to turn a shade of green. Will he come save me, and what about Tatsuki-chan? Orium shook her head. No, I'm better off here for now. I'm not worth coming after. I will see them on the field of battle. I can be rescued then. Orium said, trying to smile. It was then that she felt a surge of riot so flow up from beneath her. Halfway across the palace Talbumasuk felt it too. He smiled. They're here. Halfway across Hueco Mundo, far outside Las Noches, Ichigo and his companions burst through the wall into a dark room. Ichigo was in the center, Tatsuki to his right side, Shinji to his left. Chad was to Shinji's left and Uriah was to Tatsuki's right. So this is the place, huh? Shinji said with an unimpressed look. You know, for a world of monsters, the structures here are pretty solidly built. I was just thinking the same thing. Ichigo said. Would you two keep your voices down? Tatsuki asked in a loud whisper. We should try to make this operation as stealthy as possible. Do you want Talbumasuk to send all of the Espada after us at once? Well, if that were to happen, we'd just leave Ichigo to suffer, grab Orium-chan and catch him on the way out. Shinji joked. Hey! Ichigo barked. What did I just say? Tatsuki griped in a loud whisper. It doesn't really matter if we're loud or if we're quiet though. Shinji said. Ichigo leaks his riotsu everywhere. They probably knew we were here from the moment we broke through the Garganta. Well, that makes things simple then. Ichigo said, taking the lead to walk forward. We just grab the first Aaron car we see, pummel his ass, and make him tell us where Orium is. It's ass, Ichigo. Tatsuki growled. Some Arrancar can be girls, you know, you sexist jerk. Oh, whatever. You knew what I meant. Ichigo said, continuing to walk forward. Tatsuki growled. There's no reason to get upset, Arisawa. Uriah said, pushing his glasses in. Hollows are predominantly male anyway, so it's only logical to think that we'd run into a male Arrancar, at least for someone like Ichigo. What's that supposed to mean? Someone like me. Ichigo turned his head around and glared at Uriah. You know I didn't join this escapade so we could bicker at each other. The less time we spend talking, the more time we can focus on rescuing Orium-chan. Shinji put in. The others realized his point and the group walked down the dark hall. It wasn't long before they found themselves in a large, well-lit hall with a staircase on the other end. Awesome, that must be the exit. Tatsuki ran forward only for an Arrancar shaped like a kite to appear in front of her. Where do you think you're going, intruder? The Arrancar asked her. From behind the group a much bigger Arrancar showed up. He had hair styled like a citizen of Area 27, formerly known as Jamaica. Piece of cake, Ichigo said, putting a handle on his Zanpakuto. There are 5 of us and 2 of them. Yeah, no. You guys stay back and just let me handle this. Shinji said. What? Ichigo could not believe he just heard Shinji say that. You're going to fight them alone? Tatsuki asked. That's crazy. I've been docile for nearly 100 years. I haven't had a good fight with a hollow in quite some time. Shinji drew out his sword and put it on his shoulder. He adjusted his pants to fit better along his hip. If you guys fight, you'll only tire yourselves out. If I fight though, a good warm-up will be useful for things to come. So you just stand over by the wall and leave these guys to me. Shinji told them. Ichigo, say something. Uriah shouted at the orange-haired teen. How long do you think you'll need? Ichigo asked. Ichigo. Uriah was surprised to see Ichigo so willing to take a breather. No more than 5 minutes. Shinji said. 5 minutes then. If you take longer than that, I'm stepping in. Ichigo said. Just line up on the wall and get out of the battle zone. Shinji lazily looked over his shoulder. Ichigo nodded and did as he was told. Ichigo, are you sure about this? Tatsuki asked him. There's nothing to worry about. Shinji's a former captain. I've seen what he's capable of. Ichigo said, recalling how Shinji was overpowering Grimmjow when he fought the Espada. There's no cause for alarm at all. You've got guts, Soul Reaper, taking us both on at once. Aisling said to Shinji. And you're especially boastful, saying that it'll only take you 5 minutes to beat both of us. Did I say that? Shinji asked and then disappeared behind Aisling as all 4 of his gun-firing arms were sliced off. He looked at Aisling with a bored look. I meant 5 seconds. He held up his hand. Hado 40, Midori Kaminari. Green lightning, 5 bolts of lightning, 1 from each of Shinji's fingers, fired forward and zapped Aisling into unconsciousness. Bah! Aisling weak. Demora shouted. Demora smash, puny Soul Reaper. Demora threw a punch at Shinji. With the same bored look on his face, Shinji slashed Demora's hand off from the wrist down. The imperfect Arrancar howled in pain, clutching his stump arm as he staggered backwards. Shinji took aim at the Arrancar's face. Hado 20, Yoshigazo. Proton shot. From his hand, Shinji fired a continuous stream of cobalt electricity into Demora's face. The Arrancar reeled and he clutched his palms to his eye area. Shinji put his hand down and with another Shunpo step emerged right past Demora with his sword already across his body, ready to be sheathed. He did so and cut Demora clean in half. Shinji put his sword away. I guess I overestimated them. He said, looking at the fallen creatures. Tatsuki, Uriah, and Chad looked at Shinji with widened eyes. None of them had expected Shinji to so effortlessly cut down 2 Arrancar. Uriah had been counting in his head. Shinji hadn't even taken a full minute to cut both of those Arrancar down. Ichigo just stood with his arms folded, grinning. He knew there was nothing to worry about. Shinji was more than capable of dealing with low-level Arrancar. The quintet began to head for the staircase only for the walls to begin to crack and the whole area begin to shake. "TCH, man, this Talbumasuk fellow doesn't leave anything to chance," Shinji noted. "If your subordinates die you try to crush the enemy with them, smart planning on his part. What the hell are you praising the bad guy for, huh?" Tatsuki said as the group continued to run for their lives. "To defeat your enemy you must first think like your enemy, or did So iPhone never cover that lesson with you?" Shinji asked. His figuring was that if Tatsuki was trained by such a woman in the spectrum of supernatural combat that So iPhone would have covered all the basic lessons and quips. "Oh, bite me!" Tatsuki shouted. The group headed out of the underground and made it to the surface. They were now on the surface of Hueco Mundo. There was white sand everywhere, a black sky with a crescent moon and small saplings all around. "Now this looks more befitting to a world of monsters," Shinji noted. "Indeed," Uriah said, fixing his glasses. "So where to now?" Ichigo asked. "How about there?" Tatsuki said, pointing in the opposite direction of which she and the others were facing. Her four male friends turned around and saw a large palace in the distance, covered by a dome with large towers sticking out. It almost looked like a circular power plant. "What is that?" "It looks like some kind of palace," Ichigo said. Shinji rubbed his head. "Geez Aizen, what did you do? Go and build a palace the size of your ego." "How do you know Aizen built it?" Ichigo asked. "Ichigo, don't you remember? Talbumasuk didn't build the Aaron cars, he inherited them and everything that came with them from Aizen Sosuke," Uriah told him. "Oh, right, I knew that," Ichigo said, trying to make it seem like hadn't forgotten. "Well, let's go, the sooner we get Orium away from those guys the better," Tatsuki stated. Everyone agreed and the group took off into a sprinting run. Back at the palace, Talbumasuk was now full aware of the presence of Ichigo and the others and called for a full meet of the Espada inside what would be considered Las Noches war room. The 10 Espada sat in the room at an oval table. There were 11 seats, 10 for the Espada and 1 for Talbumasuk. Clockwise from Talbumasuk's seat at the end of the table the positions of the Espada went: Ulquiorra, Starkey, Nelliel, Halibal, Sail, Yami, Baragan, Zamari, Mia, and Grimjo. Grimjo and Ulquiorra sat across from one another. Starkey and Mia faced one another, as did Nelliel and Zamari and Halibal and Baragan. Yami and Sail sat side by side at the opposite end of the table from where Talbumasuk would be sitting. Ulquiorra sat upright at attention with his hands at his sides. Starkey slumped forward, resting on the backs of his hands. Nelliel also sat at attention, but with her arms folded in front of her on the table. Halibal sat with her arms folded under her bust. Sail was leaning forward with his right arm out on the table, as if he was going to accept an arm wrestling match. Yami was slouching onto his right hand. Baragan was sitting, leaned back in his chair with his arms folded similar to Halibal, only that his hands were gripping his elbows while Halibal's were underneath her arms. Zamari sat upright with his hands clasped together in front of him on the table. Mia leaned forward with her left arm sprawled out in front of her with her head resting on her arm. She smiled flirtatiously at Starkey, though it didn't seem like her charm was having any effect. Grimjo sat next to her with one leg curled up onto the seat and his hands in his lap. All of the Espada waited for Talbumasuk to appear. Their esteemed leader walked in and sat down in front of them, looking serious. "Good to see you all assembled," Talbumasuk said, taking his seat. "Jin, do you have my?" Talbumasuk stopped when Jin presented him a steaming hot cup of joe on a coaster. "Ah, perfect." Talbumasuk took an audible sip and swallowed the dark, hot beverage. He smiled as he held the coffee cup up. "Blacker than a moonless night, hotter and bitterer than hell itself, that is coffee." He put the mug down and began to address the Espada. "As you might have all figured out on your own by now, we've come under attack." He plucked out a remote that had been fastened to his waist by his sash and clicked a button on it at the center of the table. A virtual interface popped up showing detailed information, repeating video footage and diagrams of the intruders, carefully prepared and conceived by Aizen before the man's untimely death at Lelich's hands. "We have 5 intruders: Kurosaki Ichigo, Arisawa Tatsuki, Sato Yasutura, Ishida Uriu, and Hirako Shinji. Grimjo became alerted at the mention of Ichigo and Shinji. Talbumasuk picked up his cup of coffee and put it back down on the coaster. Mia tilted her head to the side more. How boring, she thought, Kyan-kun's not here. Those four guys aren't nearly appetizing enough to hold my attention. Although the orange-haired kid looks a lot like Kyan-kun, but he's too young. I suppose I could try the girl, but it just wouldn't be the same. So they are our enemies? Nellie asked. Ridiculous. Baragan declared. When you said we were under attack, I assumed it was an army. These are just a bunch of kids. According to the data, it looks like one of them is a visored. Hannibal said, reading Shinji's virtual profile. Bah, so what? Baragan scoffed. I agree, I don't see what all the fuss is all about. Sale said. Where's the danger? Talbumasuk took a big gulp of his coffee and put his cup down with a little more force than was necessary. It would be best not to underestimate these so-called kids, and as Hannibal said, Hirako Shinji is no kid, he is a visored and a former captain of the Godi I-13. One man will make no difference. Baragan said. Even so, it would be best not to underestimate any of them. Others have made the same mistake and were thoroughly defeated. A little while ago they were labeled as Ryoka, a team of 6 in all, and broke into the Soul Society to rescue Kukaki Rukia. Talbumasuk said. You say that there were 6, but I only see 5. Where's the 6th warrior? Zamari asked. That would Inu Orium. Ulquiera said. Oh, that's cute. Mia smiled, turning upside down, back of her head against the table. They've come to save their friend. If that's the case, we should give them a nice warm welcome, don't you think? We'll gather them all together and one by one. Mia laughed and made a hacking noise with her throat to indicate the desire to kill. Your eagerness is as amusing as always, Mia, though there is something you all should be aware of. Hirako Shinji was not the 6th warrior in the invasion to save Kukaki Rukia. He has taken the place of the former commander of the executive militia, Fong Shaolin, otherwise known as So iPhone. She is an outcast from the Soul Society and the teacher of Arisawa Tatsuki and Kurosaki Ichigo. What does her absence tell you? He asked. It sounds like you are implying that we can expect more visitors in the time to come. Star K said. That is precisely what I'm saying. Talbumasuk said, and then finished off his coffee. He held out the cup and Jin refilled it as he talked. However, while our intruders might indeed be strong, there is no reason to go out and engage them head-on. In fact, doing so would be disadvantageous. If we let them come to us, they will tire themselves out from all of their running while we are able to fight at our full strength. What? Why would you do that? Grimjo shouted. Deploy us now and let's kill these assholes before they even get here. I agree with Jaeger Jacques. What would be the point of letting the enemy come here when we can get them before they become a problem? Baragan asked. Talbumasuk sipped his coffee again and then extended his mugged hand towards Baragan with a smug smile. Simple, they will provide me with interesting data and how successful an attempt to conquer Las Noches will be. It also gives us a chance to prepare, spring some traps, and we have home terrain. It's tactics, Baragan. Not everything can be solved simply by charging ahead and taking the enemy head-on. Besides, where's the fun in not letting the enemy believe they have a fighting chance? And, what happens when they start to overpower us? Baragan asked. If they overpower us, Talbumasuk said, jutting out his index finger, and should that happen, he titled his head back to take another drink of coffee, I shall take care of them myself. He drank all of the dark liquid in his cup and then set it down. All of you should report to your posts and act as if everything were normal until the enemy arrives. Once they have reached us, I will begin dishing out guard posts from there. Talbumasuk held up his mug to Baragan again. Surely you cannot see any flaws in my logic now, can you? Baragan simply showed his teeth and growled with an intimidating grimace. He hated Talbumasuk more than he hated Aizen. Talbumasuk was physically 10 years Aizen's junior, so he tended to act slightly less mature than the brown-haired, late traitor. Bowing to Aizen was one thing, but to Baragan it was humiliating to have to bow to someone who was, in his eyes, a kid. Your irritation speaks volumes. Talbumasuk said and held out his cup for another drink. He took a sip before ending his speech. At any rate, things will be fine as long as you remain calm, and continue to follow me, no matter the enemy. We are an unstoppable fighting force. Now then, dismissed. With that, all of the Espada began to pile out of the meeting room. Jin. Yeah. Jin asked. Go down to maintenance and get the head engineer to come to my recreational room and fix the large screen so that I may watch everything unfold at once. Talbumasuk said. Yeah, no, I could just go down to the monitor room. Jin said, slightly confused. I prefer to watch entertainment in comfortable conditions. Surely you can understand that. Talbumasuk said. I'll get on it right away. Jin said with a big smile. He found Talbumasuk to be a lot more fun than traveling around with Aizen. His revenge scheme was long since kaput, but he still needed the Hogyaku, and how often did he get a chance to be truly evil? Besides, Jin felt that Talbumasuk needed someone as an aide to be nearby when he required assistance, besides Ulquiorra at any rate. He felt that allowing Talbumasuk to become as well prepared and mighty as possible would be a lot more fun when the time came for the clash against the Soul Society. Jin had decided he'd spectate unless ordered to, and he'd make his move eventually to prove where his loyalties lay. The Hogyaku just had to be in friendly hands. Talbumasuk was no fool. He knew Jin's connections to Rangiku. Jin knew that one false step out of line and he'd put her under fire. Jin didn't need Rangiku to hate him more than she already did, or at least he figured she had to hate him. After all, he had betrayed her. At least I apologized before I left. If I gotta die, at least I did that in advance. Lelouch, if something happens to me, I'm counting on ya to take care of Ranchan. 10th Division. Lelouch sneezed as he went to put a book back on his shelf. He grabbed a tissue and used it and then placed the book back where it belonged. He had a lot of paperwork to do because of his venture into the world of the living. His desk was stacked so high he couldn't even see past it. Lelouch hated paperwork. He always felt that the Godiai could function just fine without filling in every little detail that happened across the Soul Society. Lelouch believed in the philosophy that no news was good news. He was tired of redundant reports of blank pages of nothing. If nothing happened, why report it? He also didn't appreciate Rangiku dumping his responsibilities onto him. He was thankful that Shisato had come by earlier to help with some work, but that still left him with 2 seats worth of paperwork to finish. Sighing, he continued his work. He could only hope that Ichigo and the others would be fine until phases 2 and 3 of his plan kicked in. It was the middle of the night, sometime after 9 p.m., and Lelouch was burning the midnight oil. By his calculations, assuming he knew his comrades well enough, there would be an announcement tomorrow of strange disappearances and unauthorized uses of Senkaimon. Lelouch finished the sheet he was working on and sighed as he collapsed his head on his desk. He was exhausted. He had been sitting at his desk since morning filling these destroyed trees out. Lelouch didn't realize that he had drifted off to sleep until he found himself being shaken awake. Captain! Captain! Lelouch groggily opened his eyes and noticed that the lights to his office were off and all of the paperwork was gone. The only light shining into the room was the candle by the window and the moon in the sky. Lelouch, though he had been half awake when he heard it, recognized who had shaken him awake. Rangiku, what happened to all the paperwork? Lelouch asked authoritatively. Oh, I got it done with Shisato's help, she said. Lelouch could tell she was right behind him. You looked so tired and I just felt so bad, Rangiku said with a pouty lip. Yeah, right. Lelouch collapsed upon his desk. What time is it? He asked. A little after midnight, Rangiku said. I just came back from bringing all that paperwork to the mailroom. I wanted to see if you were okay. I'm fine, Lelouch responded, talking into the desk, just tired from all of the paperwork, that's all. He stood up only for his back to press firmly right into Rangiku's soft chest. Lelouch's lower body awakened in an instant. You shouldn't stand so close behind me, he said to Rangiku. Why not? She asked, whining a little. Because I said so, Lelouch said, having no better comeback, and began to walk away. He needed a good night's rest. His body was trying to tell him that. Unfortunately for him, Rangiku had other plans for him. She grabbed Lelouch's wrist, causing him to look in her direction. Lelich was further aroused by what he saw. Ranjika was not wearing her shitajai underneath her kosid and was wearing the skirt version of her lower body clothing rather than the standard hakama. Lelich swallowed. Ranjika sidled up towards him and the back of his hand brushed up against her boob. Lelich noted that they felt incredibly squishy and didn't seem to be properly bounded. Is she not wearing a bra either? He wondered. He knew Ranjika had a lot of seduction tricks. She had tried them many times on him when he first became captain, but to avoid becoming attached to her he rejected such advances. He thought he knew all of Ranjika's tactics, but this was a new one. She'd never changed her attire down to the bare minimum just to seduce him. This was definitely new. Lelich noticed she wasn't wearing sandals or tabi either. Lelich looked at her face. Ranjika was smiling and there was a slight red color in her cheeks. Ranjika was drunk, but she was under what would be considered the legal limit in Britannia. "Elle, let go of my hand," Lelich said, turning away, blushing. Now of all times he couldn't be with her. Susanna was carrying his child and he was going to be a faithful father. "Hey, she did tell you that you didn't have to stay fixated on her?" Ian Tamashi said. "Are you telling me to go for it?" Lelich asked. "Well, you better do something. Your inner world is turning into a furnace again," Ian Tamashi stated. "Captain, why do you always turn me away?" Ranjika asked, seeming to be genuinely hurt. She began to move her hands up Lelich's arm as if it were a climbing rope until both hands were firmly on his shoulder. She gave Lelich her most puppy dog-eyed pitiful look. "Haven't I always been loyal and faithful to you? I know you like my body." Ranjika reached around and grabbed Lelich's junk. "See?" she said, stroking it. Lelich's right hand, which was on the doorway, gripped the wood tightly as he shuddered from having Ranjika touch him there. "You're already hard. Ranjika, this is improper. You know Susanna has my child inside her, this isn't fair to her," Lelich said sternly. "Don't make me write you up." Ranjika let go of Lelich and suddenly got mad at him, putting her hands on her hip. "Hey, I would have gotten to you first, you know, but Kukaki and his wife had to go and," she threw her arm lazily across her body, "mess it up." Ranjika stumbled forward into the wall. Lelich, as an instinct, stopped her, causing his arm to firmly grab her large bosom in order to keep her from falling over. The right side of Ranjika's body was flush against him. The poor captain had no idea Ranjika had done that entirely on purpose. Ranjika began to straddle herself up Lelich's body and looked him right in the face. "I want you, Lelich. It's not fair for anyone to have you all to themselves." She began to speak huskily as she drew closer to his face. "You're too handsome and charismatic to be a one-woman man." Ranjika pushed her body onto Lelich's, forcing herself onto him and kissed him passionately. She stopped when she realized he wasn't moving. "Come on, just this once. It's not fair to Susanna," he said. "She doesn't care, honest. We had a long time to talk with each other while you were away. 2 weeks ago." "Say, Susanna," Ranjika asked her as the Silverette sat on the couch with some store-bought tomato soup while Ranjika had some Chex Mix and mushrooms with ketchup on a bun with roast beef. Susanna looked at Ranjika. "So are you and Lelich going to work things out, or are you going to go with this yourself?" Ranjika wanted to know. Susanna smiled and went back to looking forward. "Lelich Dono said he would be at my side and raise the child with me. It's not fair for me to tie him down though, I don't deserve it. I'm so plain. He could have anyone. He had Nemia before me." She looked over her shoulder. "I wouldn't be surprised if you liked him too." Ranjika laughed, trying to mask that she actually had feelings for Lelich. Emotional attachment was not something she liked to show if it meant nothing. She didn't like wearing her heart out on her sleeve. She found it was easy to get hurt if she did that. "Me? Oh, I'll be honest that I find Lelich to be incredibly handsome, but as for a relationship..." Ranjika continued to laugh. Susanna went back to her soup and Ranjika continued to eat her sandwich that Orium prepared. "Say, Susanna," Ranjika was now talking in a much calmer voice, looking away, hiding her eyes from the world, "if I really did become romantically involved with Lelich, would that bother you?" "I told you before," Susanna said, putting her soup down, just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean that should force Lelich Dano to be tied down to me. But don't you love him? Rangiku asked. I do, but, if I take him like this I want him to come to me because he feels the same way, not because of the baby. Susanna said, placing a hand on her stomach. That's selfish and it's not fair to Lelich Dano. So you don't want him around? Rangiku asked. I do, but, I can't force him to be with only me, not unless I find reason to believe that he wants to be with me for me and not because of the child. She said. I see, thank you for clarifying that. Rangiku told her. Present day. Rangiku's eyes were slightly tinted with tears. None had fallen, but she wasn't acting. She was genuinely hurt. You don't realize the position I'm in, do you? Rangiku asked. All I've ever had in my life is you and Jin. You don't see the void left behind by his betrayal. You don't know the hole that's been carved into my very soul. I came to you when I started to feel him drift away. I thought perhaps you, who have always cared for me, would help me, but you're just so selfish. I tried it all, aromatherapy, brothels, and romance novels, but nothing works. 2 tears fell from her face. Lelich could see the sincerity in Rangiku's eyes. Captain, why won't you comfort me? Rangiku had not come to Lelich's office just to break down in front of him. Her scantily clothed self could attest to that. She had tried to seduce him, tried to get him to lay down with her, but he was just being cold. So now here she was, pouring her heart out to him and he was acting like she was just another soul reaper. It hurt her. It hurt her a lot. Lelich suspected the alcohol in her bloodstream might be causing the shakiness of Rangiku's emotional barriers. He had seen her when she saw him in jail. She was well in control of herself back then. She was completely and utterly breaking down now. Reflected in his eyes was no longer the voluptuous and beautiful temptress, but the little girl he had met in Rokanga all those years ago who was finally grown up. Lelich felt awful. The last person he wanted to hurt, even unintentionally, was Rangiku. Out of all the Soul Reapers in the Soul Society he had known her the longest. He still remembered when she clung to him because she had a nightmare. He spoke 2 words to Rangiku. I'm sorry. He then wrapped his arms tightly around her and embraced her. His arms formed a superficial blanket around Rangiku. She could feel Lelich's warmth flowing into her. She put her hand on his chest. Lelich. She said his name, trying not to cry. Rangiku. Lelich spoke her name with tenderness, like he treasured her in his heart. He placed his hand carefully underneath her chin and tilted her head up to look at him and then kissed her lips. Rangiku loved how he tasted. Lelich reached around Rangiku's shoulders with arm and grabbed her backside with the other, hand firmly on her ass and then noticed something as he did so. She's not wearing any panties. He realized just how much Rangiku was trying to get his attention. He wondered how he could have been so blind. This was different from Susanna. Lelich was the first thing Susanna ever acquired. For Rangiku though, Lelich was the only thing she had left. Susanna gave her support to Lelich to keep him from feeling alone. Rangiku just didn't want to be alone. Lelich then realized how much he cherished them both, and Nimue too. I'll never a secure relationship at this rate. He thought. Like father, like son. Iin Tamashi hummed. Lelich did his best to ignore her implication. Then again, he did realize that either he would have to confine himself to one of them or turn out like his father. Lelich decided he would come back to this problem another time. He broke away from Rangiku and looked at her. She smiled at him. Daisuke, Rangiku. Lelich said to her. He really did care about her. She should know how he felt. I'm sorry that I hurt you. Please don't apologize. It's not your fault. She told him. It doesn't matter. Lelich told her. You're the last person I'd ever want to know that I hurt, emotionally or physically. Rangiku put a finger to Lelich's lips. Stop, she was on the verge of breaking down again. If you say anything else. I'll. Lelich moved her finger out of the way. I'll always be here for you. Stop that, if you keep saying stuff like that, I don't want to fall apart. Rangiku said. Why, will it remove the last of your strength? Didn't you want me to comfort you? Lelich asked her. Lelich's words were enough to send Ranjika over the edge and the last of her walls fell. Ranjika clung to Lelich's robe and began to cry. These weren't stifled sobs. Ranjika was howling like a wounded animal. It was as if Lelich had just removed a plug that was wedged into a dam over her heart. Lelich soothed his longtime friend. He let Ranjika cry and fall apart in his arms. He was a pillar of strength, there to support her now that she had none to speak of at the moment. Lelich knelt down with her and, now on the floor, Ranjika leaned into Lelich and became a complete, beautiful mess in his arms. She did finally stop. She stood up with Lelich and clung to him with her arms around his body, breasts pushing into his left arm. She walked with him as if letting go meant that her world would shatter. Still, Ranjika had control of Lelich's movements since her feet were locked around his left foot. Clinging to him, she led him over to his bedroom adjoining to his office. She needed him, all of him. It was the only way she could take the first step to recovery. Even if nothing became of it, she just needed Lelich now to get over her shattered soul. Lelich knew that just as much as she did, which is why he had brought her down to the level he had. By nearly breaking her, he had brought her down to her raw self, a weak, helpless woman with a broken heart caused by the betrayal of her closest friend and the awful feeling that the only other person she could turn to for help wouldn't even give her the time of day. Lelich pushed her down onto the bed. Any other time Ranjika would have beckoned her partner forward to come closer, but she had been brought down to such a level that all she could do was look at Lelich with an anxious look as she held her hand up by her face, almost gnawing on her fingernails. Lelich unzipped her skirt and untied her sash before opening up her corset, leaving Ranjika to look up at the only person left in her world she could truly count on. Please be gentle with me, Ranjika said to Lelich. You act like this is your first time. Lelich smirked down at her. He knew she wasn't a virgin. There were three indisputable, if somewhat exaggerated, facts in the Soul Society. 1. Crossing Anohana meant certain death. 2. Captain Kiraku Shunsui always woke up with a hangover. And 3. Ranjika got around. I know, but I haven't done it like this in a while, Ranjika said. Done it like what? Lelich asked. Done it with someone I care about who also cares about me, Ranjika answered. Lelich smiled at her. I'll be gentle, he told her. First though, he started by warming her up. He licked around Ranjika's right nipple and stroked his right hand up her most sensitive area, sometimes stroking the inner folds of her pussy. Ranjika threw her head back and let out a pleased moan. By stripping away her emotional barriers, he had made her very sensitive, not to mention Lelich had become quite good at pleasing women. Having Nemia for a first partner will do that to a person. When Lelich was certain Ranjika was at the same level of arousal as him, he hung his Haori on the nearby coat rack and removed his hakama, kosid, waraji, and tabi, leaving only his shitaji on, of which he undid the belt to and just let it drape around him before removing that as well. He then straddled Ranjika and looked down upon, then kissed her and broke away before entering into her. Ranjika gripped the sheets of Lelich's bed as she moaned in complete ecstasy. Her jugs bounced with every thrust and eventually Lelich grabbed them with his hands, squeezing them and rotating them around. Yes, do that, Ranjika managed to get out. Play with my breasts, she then moaned. Oh, Lelich, you're so good. You feel so amazing inside, Ranjika, Lelich told her. Oh, Lelich. Leluyich, Ranjika moaned. Ranjika was starting to gasp with every passing thrust. She could feel herself building up for a rather intense climax. Lelich, I'm going to. Me too, Ranjika, Lelich grunted. W with me, inside me, Ranjika exclaimed. The captain and vice-captain duo climaxed together as Lelich released his seed into Ranjika's body. In the rush he hadn't realized what could occur from such an action and only started thinking about it after he came down from his high, once he and Ranjika were snugly under the covers sharing the body warmth of each other, still nude. What am I going to do if you get pregnant too? He asked. Oh, you don't have to worry about that this time. Today's not one of my dangerous days and I always take an ECP as a precaution after things like this, so we'll be fine, Ranjika said. And besides, She massaged her captain's shoulders. "I told you already," she said, and then spoke in a cutesy voice, "you're too handsome and charismatic to be tied down to be a one-woman man." Still, she stopped massaging Lelich and just snuggled up as close as she could next to him. "I'm just glad I had you for this moment, even if I lose you afterwards. I know that you care." Lelich turned over to look his subordinate in the eye. "I won't ever distance myself from you. Not ever again," he told her. "I will always watch over you and be here for you, when you need me." "Thank you, Lelich," Rangiku said with a sweet smile and half-closed eyes. It wasn't long before she fell asleep and Lelich did the same, with his head nestled in between her breasts. End of Chapter 61. Chapter 62, Kurosaki and Shiba, Bonds Beyond Blood. Third-person POV. Kukaki Manor, 1 a.m. Rukia couldn't sleep. She stood outside in the Sakura garden wondering what she should do. Ichigo trusted her and considered her a friend. He helped her when she thought she had no one, and how did she repay him? She walked away and betrayed his trust. How could she look him in the eye now? What could she do? Even stranger to her was the conversation she, her Nei-san and her Nii-sama had earlier. 12 hours ago. Rukia and Hisuna had returned to the Kukaki Manor. Hisuna and Rukia had been discussing what to do about Orium being kidnapped. Hisuna was afraid that Rukia would go out and get herself injured, or worse killed, if she left her to her own devices by going back to the world of the living and plotting a course straight into Hueco Mundo. To prevent such things, she told Rukia she was placing her under house arrest. Though not in her Nei-san's squad, a sixth seat such as Rukia was forced to obey the order from a captain unless an order from her captain overturned such an order. "But Nei-san, Ichigo needs me, and you too. We need to help him," Rukia complained. "Rukia, Lelich denied giving Ichigo the chance to go into Hueco Mundo, he can't even get there," Hisuna responded. "Urahara Kisuke," Rukia stated firmly. Hisuna realized what Rukia was implying. "Okay, still, are you telling me that Ichigo is that stupid as to plot a suicide mission into enemy territory just to rescue a friend?" Ahem, Rukia cleared her throat and held her arms above her head and flicked her wrists with her index fingers extended to indicate her existence. "Right, point taken." Hisuna subsided. "Even so, I forbid you to leave the house except to go to the 13th Division for work-related purposes. If Ichigo really does cause a problem, a rescue party will be dispatched." "What's so important about Ichigo anyway?" Rukia held up her left hand. The ring on her finger sparkled. "In case you've forgotten, Ichigo is Kyan Dano's cousin. Even if that were not the case, Ichigo is the only real normal friend I have." "What about Renji?" Hisuna asked. "The only real normal friend I have," Rukia repeated. "What's all the arguing about?" Byakuya strolled into the hallway where Rukia and Hisuna were. "Oh great, now I'm going to get it." Although Hisuna was now more inclined to taking Rukia's side and Byakuya had become more brotherly towards Rukia, he still always took Hisuna's side when she and her sister argued because Hisuna was always older and wiser. Rukia is having suicidal tendencies by wanting to charge headfirst into Hueco Mundo because she believes Ichigo will need help because, as you and I know, Kyan's cousin is that stupid as to plot a suicide mission into enemy territory. Hisuna said. "And Nei-san says I have to stay in the house unless I have orders." Rukia stomped her foot. "It's not fair." "And? You weren't exactly given orders to keep her here. As you are Rukia's legal guardian and not her captain, don't you think you're being a mite irrational?" Byakuya asked. Rukia could hardly believe what she was hearing. Byakuya was on her side. Of course Hisuna didn't see it that way. "Rukia is my sister, Byakuya-sama. I thought we talked about this." "We did. We can talk about it again in a more private location if you'd like," Byakuya said, his tone indicating the desire for a serious discussion, just one outside of earshot from Rukia. Hisuna glared. "Still, as you are Rukia's primary legal guardian, I leave it to you to decide what is best suited for her. Now if you'll excuse me, my presence is desired at the Kazumioji household," Byakuya said and walked on by past the two sisters. Besides, going to retrieve Kurosaki Ichigo to save him from his own stupidity or to assist wouldn't be such a bad thing. It must be unpleasant for the enemy to have such a dingy boy running around their territory. He walked down the hall turned down to another corridor out of sight. Present day. Rukia still couldn't believe Byakuya had taken her side in an argument. For so many years he was always the one she had argued with, and he always stayed out of her and Hisona's arguments unless they were of personal importance to him. Rukia was amazed at her and Isama's change in attitude towards her. She almost laughed, almost. Rukia yawned and prepared to head back inside when a suspicious shadow appeared right behind her, covered her mouth and whisked her away. She was gone without a trace. 3 a.m. Byakuya Hisona's bedroom. Hisona woke up from her slumber from an odd dream. She had no idea Rukia had been nabbed 2 hours ago, but as she lay awake she thought about a conversation she and Byakuya had a while ago. 8 hours ago. Byakuya and Hisona were in the study, door locked and both alone. Hisona had a few choice words for Byakuya's commentary earlier, but what came out was, "Why did you say that to Rukia? Don't you care about her? I thought we discussed this." She copped an attitude. "If that is what it sounded like to you, allow me to clarify. I was merely asserting that Rukia is more than capable of defending herself in a dangerous situation. I've already apologized for my actions when you two were phantoms, though apologies will never be enough. However, Rukia is capable of senior officer status." Byakuya folded his arms. "I was with her during those 15 years watching out for her," Hisona declared. "And so you believe that Rukia is helpless without your guidance?" Byakuya asked. "She raised herself in Rukanga after you abandoned her. I think that shows the kind of endurance and determination your sister is capable of." "That's..." Hisona didn't have a comeback. "I thought you decided you were going to be a better sister to her," Byakuya said. "And look what happened. She got a hole punched into her stomach," Hisona declared. "Of which she survived," Byakuya noted. "That's not the point." Hisona stamped her foot. "Hisona, you need to calm down." Byakuya lifted his gaze. Hisona simply growled under her breath. Byakuya continued to speak. "I understand you are worried for Rukia's safety, but that doesn't mean you have to hover over her. I've noticed Rukia desires her space and to be recognized as mature enough to make her own decisions. Besides, if she were to get hurt, it's not you who's to blame, it's Kurosaki Ichigo." "You've got a point there," Hisona said. "Even so, you need to start recognizing Rukia's individuality. I understand how you feel. You feel if you let go of her too much you'll lose her again," Byakuya stated. "That is not true," Hisona said in anguish. She opened her mouth to say something again, but turned and ran out of the room. Present time. Hisona turned over and put a hand on Byakuya's shoulder. From his breathing she could tell that he was roused from the realm of sleep a little bit too. "Byakuya-sama." Byakuya's gruff voice responded. "I'm sorry about earlier. You were right. I am afraid of losing Rukia," Hisona said to him. "Words mean nothing unless you put them into action. What do you plan to do about it?" Byakuya wanted to know. Hisona snuggled closer to Byakuya. "Tomorrow I'm going to apologize to Rukia and open the family Senkaimon. You'll turn a blind eye, right?" Byakuya mumbled, indicating he agreed. "Then that's what I'll do," Hisona said and wrapped her arms around her husband from behind. She nuzzled her head into the side of his shoulder. "Good night, Byakuya-sama," she said sleepily and fell asleep. The next day. 10 a.m. It had been about an hour after Hisona had woken up and she was already in a panic. She couldn't find Rukia anywhere. Not in the mansion, not in her division, not even at the women's club. She made her way to the Shiba Manor, but was barred entry. Apparently Kyan had issued an order that there were to be no visitors on clan grounds without a clan escort, even if said visitors were captains or clan heads. When Hisona spoke to Yuka next, she found out Kyan hadn't even shown up for work yet. Things were getting weirder and more frightening for Hisona. There was only one place she could go. She circled 3 sections clockwise of the CRITI from 13th Division and went straight to the captain's office. "Lelich." She banged on the door. "Lelich. Open up." Inside his bedroom, Lelich could hear Hisuna banging on the door. Ranjika was in his bathroom taking a shower. Whatever Hisuna needed he was going to make damn sure she didn't come inside his office for fear of discovery. He wasn't ashamed by what had occurred last night, in fact he rather enjoyed it, but he wasn't ready for the world to know of such a connection between him and Ranjiku. Hisuna might have been no gossip girl, but he couldn't take any chances. He opened the door and shut it behind him and leaned against it, arms folded, to talk to his fellow captain. "What can I do for you, Hisuna?" he asked. "Rukia's missing. I can't find her anywhere. I've looked everywhere I thought I might find her, the clan grounds, Kyan's office, her office, and Kyan's prevented entry to the Shiba Manor." Hisuna listed. "What about Renji's office?" Lelich asked. "Everywhere I thought I might find her," Hisuna repeated, remembering Rukia's attitude towards her comrade yesterday. Lelich put his index finger and thumb under his chin. "Ah, I know that look." Hisuna perked up. "You've got an idea, don't you?" she asked. "I do," Lelich said calmly. "In fact things are going just as I predicted they would from the moment we left Karakura town." Lelich began to walk down the hallway. "Follow me." "That's fine," Hisuna said, trailing after the 10th Division captain, "but where are we going?" "To where Rukia is of course," Lelich said. "I know exactly where she has to be right about now." Hueco Mundo. Ichigo and his Nakama were taking a break. They had been running now for what felt like hours across the white sands of Hueco Mundo. This must be Talbumasuke's plan, Shinji huffed, lying on the ground. "We run all the way to his fortress, and we get tired out by the time we get there. If only we had some kind of transportation." Tatsuki panted. "I agree," Ichigo said. The quintet caught their breath and headed off again after the castle. It wasn't long before they finally encountered an enemy, Runogunga the Guardian of the White Sands. He appeared just as the group seemed to feel like they were making progress on the palace. He announced himself quite proudly. "I am Runogunga, Guardian of the White Sands. By order of his lordship Tremere Talbumasuke, I will turn you all into dust. Like hell you are. Getsuga Tensho." Ichigo blasted Runogunga with his energy beam, but the hollow reformed. "No way. You cannot defeat me, Soul Reaper," Runogunga announced. "I am the invincible demon of Sandai. Never shut up and are vulnerable to water." A loud, proud voice called from behind Ichigo and the others. "Rankle the seas and skies, Nijibana." Ichigo and the others turned to see Kyan leap out from over a high-mounted sand dune with his Shikai released. Kyan twirled his Shikai so rapidly it looked as if Kyan had created a perpetual disk of water around his Zanpakuto. When did Kyan spin his Zanpakuto that fast? Ichigo wondered, staring. "Take this. Date Nenegama." The water disk went firing out and splashed Runogunga, causing him to fall apart. "Dance, Sode no Shirayuki." That voice. Ichigo heard his most dynamic partner's voice resonate through the air. "Tsuji no Mai, Hakuren." The flash of white snow froze Runogunga on the spot and destroyed him, what was left of him anyway. Rukia then leapt over the sand dune and landed next to Kyan. After her, one more person leapt over it and landed in between the engaged couple, Kyokaku. "Kyokaku. Kyan. Rukia. You guys came." Ichigo ran towards his friends and family, jubilant to see that they had shown up. Kyan, Rukia, and Kyokaku all smiled at him. As Ichigo drew near though, Rukia hooked him with her right fist right under his chin. She tagged to Kyan who drove his elbow into Ichigo's chest. He then tagged to Kyokaku who chopped Ichigo fiercely over the head, and knocked him to the ground. "Is that how you guys treat a relative?" Ichigo groaned as he made to get up. "Are you okay, Ichigo?" Tatsuki asked. "Does he look okay to you?" Shinji remarked. "You idiot!" Rukia shouted at Ichigo. "Why did you go off on your own to Hueco Mundo? Why couldn't you have just waited for us to come back and help you?" "Because," Ichigo said, "I had no idea if you were actually going to come back or not." Rukia got in his face. "Of course we were. No matter what. Rukia shouted. She knelt down in front of Ichigo, who still hadn't gotten fully to his feet yet. Kyan Dano, Kyokaku-sama, and I were planning to come back from the very beginning. Why couldn't you wait for us? Why couldn't you trust us? Rukia asked. I thought we were supposed to be your friends. She said. Yeah, you're right. Ichigo admitted. Well, as long as you understand now. Rukia said, getting to her feet. Please don't make me ever confirm something as silly as this ever again. Yeah, great touching reunion and all, but the big glaring question on my lips is, how the hell did you guys get here? If I know Yamamoto Suteiko well enough, he'd have never let you get back to the world of the living without being in hot pursuit of the Onmitsukido. Shinji stepped forward. We snuck out. Rukia said. Correction, Kyan, and I snuck out. Kyokaku said, reaching into her cleavage for her pipe and grabbing her lighter from her pocket and lighting it. I'm confused. Ichigo said. It's simple really. Kyan said. Hisuna-san had put Rukia under house arrest, said she wasn't allowed to go anywhere unless it was on official business. So, Kyan lifted his head and put his index and middle finger, as if he were saluting, up by his forehead. I kidnapped her. Oh, I see you what? Ichigo asked. Allow me to explain. Kyan said, holding up his finger and smiling. Several hours ago, Rukia was being escorted by a shady figure that seemed to have grabbed her out of nowhere. She knew not where she was bound or why she had been taken. One thing was for certain though, the moment Rukia had an opportunity, the person holding her was going down. Rukia and the shady individual stopped a little outside the Kukaki family grounds underneath the shade of a tree. Her attacker let go of her. Rukia was about to attack. She still couldn't see the person who had taken her as their image was distorted by the moon shadow cast by the nearby tree, but her attacker's voice, which she recognized, stopped her. Perfect and without being seen. Kyan Dano. Rukia was absolutely confused. Properly identified, Kyan walked from out of the tree's shadowy cover. You guessed it. He grinned. What are you doing? Rukia asked in a loud whisper. Well, Kyokaku and I were going to head off to Kisuke's place using the family Senkaimon, but I figured you'd like to come along and help us help Ichigo too, but since your sister said you were under house arrest I couldn't just use the front door. Kyan folded his arms and grinned. So I snuck in and grabbed you before you could blink. You're kidnapping me? Rukia's expression and tone made it seem like she was elated by the prospect. Kyan rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I guess you could put it that way. Nei-san's going to give you hell when she finds out. Rukia laughed. We'll just get you back before she realizes you're gone. Kyan said. Rukia tried not to laugh. Kyan continued rubbing his head. Okay, so I'll probably get chewed out worse than a larva in a mother bird's mouth, but it can't be anything worse than anything Kyokaku would ever do to me. Kyan said. His sister had an uncanny knack of abusing her older brother whenever he did something stupid, and despite his professionalism and keen intellect, Kyan had done his fair share of stupid stunts. Kyokaku had given him hell for them, every last one of them. Rukia laughed. Suu, if I'm being kidnapped, doesn't that mean you have to carry me against my will? Rukia asked. What are we doing, role-playing? Kyan asked. Rukia laughed. Kyan rolled his eyes at the absurdity and grabbed Rukia by the arm. Come on. He escorted her to the Shiba Manor. Present time. Well, at any rate, I'm glad you're here. We could certainly use the extra hands. Ichigo said with a smile. No problem. Kyan said. Now if only we could fix our transportation issue. Tatsuki said. Oh, I don't think that will be a problem. Kyokaku said, pulling out a hyperspace capsule, once again from her cleavage. When going out into enemy territory, always be prepared. Stand back everyone. That's not going to explode, is it? Kyan asked. Kyokaku glared. Got it, moving back. When she had ample space, Kyokaku clicked the capsule and threw it at the ground. The eyes of the others twitched at what they saw. From the capsule, a fire engine red, 1960 model, Cadillac convertible appeared. Where the hell did you get that? Ichigo's eye twitched. I ripped it from the research bureau. I strong-armed Nemu into getting me in and found this hunk of junk just lying around. I stored it, took it home, unloaded it and modified it. Kyokaku put her hand on the firm metal exterior. This thing now runs purely on spirit energy and fully equipped to hover over rugged terrain. But there's only 5 seats and 8 of us. Tatsuki said. 4 and 7, I'm driving. Kyokaku pointed to herself. Everyone soon realized it was a scramble of first come first served. Shotgun. Ichigo shouted, jumping in the front seat. Oh, like hell. Tatsuki said. She and Ichigo fought over the front seat for a solid 20 seconds before they settled the argument, by Tatsuki sitting in Ichigo's lap. The car didn't have seat belts, though it wasn't like Kyokaku could crash into anything other than the quartz crystal trees. Kobain. Shinji said, jumping in behind Kyokaku. Not bitch. Kaien declared, jumping behind Ichigo and Tatsuki. Rukia sat in his lap. Urayu and Chad played a few rounds of rock/paper/scissors, which Urayu lost and was forced to hold onto the car's rear protrusions for dear life. Kyokaku's driving was rather raw. She nearly crashed into the quartz crystal trees a few times and she didn't seem to care that she was going well over 130 kilometers per hour. Isn't this thing going to run out of gas? Urayu shouted over the revving of the engine. Nope. Kyokaku said, one hand on the steering wheel, the other holding her pipe. I told you, 100% SPRITNERGY. She emphasized. Your drive's like crazy. Rukia shouted, clinging to Kaien like her life depended on it. It's not that bad. Shinji shrugged off. Ichigo looked at him like he was nuts. Of course he was looking at a man whose Zanpakuto turned everything upside down and all around, so this was nothing to him. Ichigo was gripping the door handle and back of Kyokaku's seat, legs sprawled out. Tatsuki was grabbing the back of her and Ichigo's seat, reaching over her friend's shoulder. Her other hand was on the console. Chad was enduring it. He was very disturbed by Kyokaku's ability to drive, or lack thereof. It's a good thing Kigo's not here. Tatsuki said, widened, fearful expression still on her face. Oh yeah, he'd be screaming like there's no tomorrow. Ichigo said. You guys are so weak. Kyokaku said, finding nothing wrong with her ability to drive at all. Kaien noticed that the wall to Las Noches was coming up. Sis, you're never gonna stop at this rate. Who said anything about stopping? Kyokaku asked. She wouldn't. Ichigo winced. This woman is insane. Tatsuki shouted in her head. Rukia screamed like a scared little girl and held on as Kyokaku drove right through the wall. Unfortunately, while she did manage to smash through the wall and miraculously no one got hurt, she completely wrecked the car. This is why we don't have nice things. Kaien shouted, crazed. Shut up. Kyokaku said. Everybody out. We continue this on foot. She said and jumped onto the hood of the car and into Las Noches. Hey, wait a minute, you're just gonna leave this here? Ichigo said. Kyokaku puffed on her pipe and then looked back at Ichigo. Why not? She asked. It's not like we have to pay for damages or anything. Besides, it served its purpose. Kaien Dano, I can't feel my arms. Rukia said. Sis, I am never letting you near the research department again. Kaien told her. After everyone got over the shock of Kyokaku's horrible driving, at least enough that they were able to push it aside enough to focus on the mission, the octet entered into Las Noches and came to a pathway that split into 5. The crossroads. Urayu piped up. Ichigo nodded firmly in agreement. Which way to Inu do you think? Ichigo asked to anyone who could answer. Hard to tell. Kaien responded. The Ryotsu's so dense now that we're inside the enemy's main fortress it's hard to pluck a human soul out from it. Then I guess we split up. Kyokaku said. That's about all we can do. Shinji said. I'll go this way with Rukia. Kaien said, pointing to the rightmost path. Why do you get to go with Rukia? She and I work well as a team. Ichigo responded. So do we. Kaien responded. Besides, if anything happens to her while she's with you, Hisuna will kill you this time. Ichigo remembered how angry Hisuna was when she found out what happened to Rukia when Grimmjow put a hole through her. Not only did she burn his dinner that evening, she threatened to hang him by his balls using Kaze no Iriko if he was such an irresponsible partner with her again. Ichigo did not care to risk her making good on that threat. Tatsuki put a hand on his shoulder. "No sweat, you and I will kick ass together," she told him. "Besides, it'll be fitting if you and I make it to Orium together." Ichigo nodded in agreement. He and Tatsuki took the center path. Chad took the path in between Ichigo and Rukia. Kyukaku strode off on her own to the path to the left of Ichigo, and Urayu and Shinji went off on the leftmost path. "Hey, what do we do once we find Orium? How are we going to get back together?" Ichigo questioned before everyone took off. "That's a good question. Hadn't thought of that." Kyukaku rubbed her head. "Guess we'd do this the old-fashioned way then and go searching for each other," Shinji said. "This is going to be a pain." Ichigo sighed. "We knew that this wasn't going to be easy going in here to begin with though," Tatsuki stated. "It doesn't matter though, because no matter how difficult it gets we will rescue Orium and we'll all come out of this alive. We are comrades in arms linked by the bonds we share. Together we'll make this mission a success." The girls got a point. It doesn't matter how difficult it is, this is something that must be done. Kayan agreed. Everyone nodded and then, taking one last look at the companions that would not be traveling with them, headed off down the corridors further into Las Noches. Meanwhile, Ulquiorra was exiting from Orium's room and back to his own quarters. He passed by Mia on the way. "So, how's our little guest doing?" she asked with a wide wily grin. She was leaned up against the wall by her elbow, just off to the side of Ulquiorra's path. "It's going rather smooth. She's already under our lord's spell," Ulquiorra said. Mia rotated counterclockwise and put her back to the wall, slumping down a bit. "It's so aggravating that a Tremere-sama put you in charge of her," Mia said, pretending to be hurt. "She's so pretty and innocent." Mia cracked a wide, naughty smirk. "It just makes me twitch." She sighed in ecstasy and licked her upper teeth. Ulquiorra glared at her. "You are not to go near her without a Tremere-sama's permission." Someone's touchy," Mia said lustfully. She traversed around Ulquiorra, putting a hand on his shoulder and then began to play with his hair and the horn on his mask fragment. "Perhaps you'd like to offer yourself up as a replacement. We are under attack. This is hardly the time," Ulquiorra said with a straight face. In actuality he found Mia, and her antics, quite annoying. Not nearly as annoying as Yemi, but annoying nonetheless. Mia backed off him and put her hands behind her back. "But I'm so bored," she lamented. "That is not my concern," Ulquiorra said and walked away. Mia just watched him go. She sighed when he was out of sight, only to hear the sound of approaching footsteps rushing towards her. "Mia-sama." Loli and Mainoli turned around the corner to reach their master. Perfect timing, Mia thought to herself. Although I suppose I should hear what they're so excited about first. "Mia-sama," Mainoli said. "There is word of new enemies that have come to Hueco Mundo." Mia's gaze converged. Mainoli had piqued her interest. "And? What of it?" "Mia-sama, we were watching the large screen with the Tremere-sama earlier. Your target is here," Loli told her. "Kayan-kun is here?" Mia was surprised. She dropped it to seriousness. "You are certain of this?" she asked her fraction. "Yes ma'am." Both dropped down to one knee and spoke in unison. "Of course ma'am." Mia smiled. "So you came after all, Kayan-kun." She licked her lips all around. "You've made my day." "Thank you girls," she told her fraction, "I suppose I shall go greet Kayan-kun. After all, he's come all this way. I'd hate for him to think I was ignoring him now that he's come into my territory." "Ma'am, what should we do?" Mainoli wanted to know as she and Loli got to her feet. "Absolutely nothing at all," Mia said. "What?" Loli was surprised. "I have no orders for you two at the moment. I only ask that you do not interfere with my fight with Kyan-kun, no matter what happens. She said. Hi. Mia-sama. They both saluted. Mia then left the area through the use of Sonito and began to head for the monitor room to pinpoint Kyan's exact location. This time, Kyan-kun, I shall feast on your soul to its very core. This time you shall get a taste of my true power. Mia said and suggestively stroked the handle of her Zanpakuto. To be continued. Chapter 63, Mia Aruruuri unmasked at last. Third-person POV. As Tatsuki and Ichigo continued to run down the halls of Las Noches, side by side in line with each other, though Tatsuki was a bit farther ahead than Ichigo, they talked as they ran. This is like that time in middle school, when sensei made us run after a black cat as an exercise. Tatsuki laughed. Hard to believe that cat was actually Yuriyuki-san. Ichigo said, laughing. Ha, yeah, though it explains a lot. Seriously, how else would a cat outrun a couple of budding teenagers? Tatsuki asked. Ichigo smirked, fond of the memory. He and Tatsuki had been through a lot together. Their friendship had people questioning their relationship together since the end of their freshman year of middle school. Many pieces fit. They spent a lot of time hanging out, they lived close to one another, they had a lot of the same interests, and they were always digging each other out of trouble. However, it was always the same answer, he/she's not my boyfriend/girlfriend. Towards the end of their senior year of middle school, their once tight relationship drifted apart. Ichigo found Chad and Tatsuki found Orium. Subsequently, once he entered high school, Kigo and Mizurio had joined Ichigo's nakama. Up until they met Chad and Orium respectively, the only people Ichigo and Tatsuki could call a friend were each other. It was unknown if iPhone knew this fact, and that's why she always paired them up in training. She would never admit to such a thing, though Yuriyuki would suspect that she did. Before all this craziness started, Tatsuki felt like she and Ichigo might continue to drift apart, doomed to remain friends forever or less. Ichigo felt the same, only that he didn't consider it such a bad thing. He never saw Tatsuki as a potential girlfriend, heck, he didn't see anyone like that, not consciously anyway. He wasn't above the typical teenage interest in women, despite his obvious prudency. In actuality, Ichigo, like many, simply didn't want to be labeled a pervert. He spent years crafting his tough guy attitude, accepting assistance from others as they come and went. He never really gave careful consideration to his future. He lived in the here and now, never thinking of consequences, a lesson he would have to learn if he intended on making something of himself. Tatsuki was thankful Rukia had come into Ichigo's life. She was responsible for tying the knot that bound a multi-directional rope to Ichigo, Tatsuki and their friends. Ichigo's destiny had changed, but neither Tatsuki, nor Ichigo, saw that as a bad thing at all. For now, here they were, close companions once again after a common goal, rescue Orium. Just how long is this corridor? Ichigo grumbled. Impatient as always, I see. Tatsuki smirked. Look, I just want to get Inu and get out of here. I'm not going to run from a fight, but the less time we spend here the better. Ichigo said. I know what you mean. Tatsuki nodded. She and Ichigo took about 10 more steps when they stepped into a field of Ryotsu of a particularly strong strain. Both stopped dead. I take it you feel that too? Ichigo asked. A newborn soul could feel that. Tatsuki told him. We know you're here. Ichigo said with a smirk. Quit hiding. If you won't come out, we'll just make you. Save yourself a beating and show yourself. Tatsuki added. An evil snicker sounded through the air. You shouldn't be so quick to want to fight, chica. A voice in a dialect that was as if someone was trying to speak French and Spanish at the same time sounded. You will holha. From above the rafters a man with black hair, dressed like a very showy matador, slipped and fell to the ground. He tried to show as if it was all planned and giving Ichigo and Tatsuki a very showy entry, but it failed miserably. Both teenagers looked at him with dulled expressions. Why are you two giving me that face? Because you're lame and you're annoying. Tatsuki said. What she said? Ichigo said. What? How can you say that after you have been graced by my magnificent presence? The Arrancar shouted. I've seen things more magnificent in children's cartoons. Tatsuki said depressingly. What? How can you compare me to something like that? I am no cartoon character, I am a matador. The Arrancar struck a flashy pose. Ichigo and Tatsuki's expressions did not change. Very well, I understand that not everyone will respond to me in the proper way, but no matter. Chika, Soul Reaper, prepare yourselves, for I am Dordoni I Alessandro del Saccacaio. I am Arrancar LCNY Trace Arrancar, and it is my job to destroy you. Tortellini salad del what? Are you some kind of pasta? Ichigo asked. While hearing problems were not uncommon for Ichigo, Dordoni's thick accent was sort of hard for the unilingual high school student to understand and comprehend. Tatsuki on the other hand had another issue. She glared at Dordoni. Who are you calling Chika? I'm 15, you know. If you're going to refer to me in Spanish, then Senorita or Nina will do just fine, you frilled prick. Dordoni, however, ego insulted, only heard Ichigo. It's Dordoni. I am not a pasta dish. Don't make me repeat myself. Yo soy Arrancar CNY Trace Dordoni I Alessandro del Saccacaio. Still sounds like a pasta to me. Ichigo thought. CNY Trace? 103. Tatsuki translated. Aren't the numeros only supposed to have 2 digits? You think Talbumasuk made more? Ichigo asked. That, or maybe he was demoted. Tatsuki joked. Oi. 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 What is with you two? Why do you show me no respect? Dordoni interjected. Well, it's just, you seem kind of weak. Ichigo said. Really, Tatsuki said with a glazed look to match Ichigo's. I mean, I expected to be facing some sort of killing machine with the Ryatsu I was feeling. She looked up at the ceiling. Do you have a more competent friend waiting to strike us up in the rafters the moment we make a move? What was that, Chika? Dordoni raged. How dare you suggest that I am not competent or powerful enough to fight you and your Soul Reaper friend? I said stop calling me Chika. Tatsuki raged and ran forward with a fiery fist. Kaso Kabushi. She was surprised when Dordoni blocked her with his bare palm and didn't take an ounce of damage. Tatsuki, look out. Ichigo warned. Tatsuki didn't have time to react and she was kicked firmly in the stomach by Dordoni and sent flying. She managed to gain aerial control and flipped backwards and landed. Tatsuki observed her opponent as he put his foot down and she panted. I see, so it was all an act. This guy is actually a competent fighter after all. Surprised? Dordoni asked. Didn't your mother ever teach either of you that you should not judge a book by its cover? We, that is to say other Arrancar like me with a 3-digit number, are known as the Privaran Espada. In other words, we are ones who were once Espada, but are no longer. We are above the numeros, in fact we are the strongest group in all of Las Noches, except for the Espada themselves, of course. Do you understand now, Nino? He asked Ichigo. Chika? He asked Tatsuki. Tatsuki growled, becoming irritated. Why do you call him Nino, but call me Chika? We're the same age. She declared. Simple, you have immature Ryatsu compared to your friend, Chika. Dordoni responded. That doesn't make any sense. We gained our powers around the exact same time. Tatsuki lamented. Hey, I have had the power to see ghosts for a few years and my powers are natural. Ichigo put in what he thought Dordoni was noticing. Tatsuki glared at him. Right, I'll be quiet. You said you're a Privaran Espada, which means you were an Espada, but are one no longer. Tatsuki smirked, jabbing a thumb at herself. I went toe-to-toe with the weakest Espada, but even though I lost, I'm much stronger now. If you're a former Espada and, as you just said, the current Espada are stronger than you, then, logically, if my own calculations in my own growth are correct, Tatsuki extended her left arm and pointed it at Dordoni with her index finger extended and thumb out, palm facing the ground, I'm stronger than you. Is that what you believe? Dordoni asked. Even if your number corresponds to the rank you used to hold, in this case the third Espada, it doesn't mean a thing if all the current Espada are stronger than you. Tatsuki told him. I'll kick your ass. Don't you mean we'll kick his ass? Ichigo asked, wondering why Tatsuki was excluding him. Please, I can kick this guy's ass all on my own. You get going. Tatsuki told him. You won't get past me. Dordonii declared, forming himself up like a goalie protecting the net behind him. Yeah, he will. Tatsuki said and disappeared only to reappear in Dordonii's defenses. Kyoyoba. Tatsuki drove the front of her leg into Dordonii's abdomen with a roundhouse kick and with the force of her spin sent him into the wall. Ichigo. Go. She told him. You got it. Ichigo felt bad leaving Tatsuki behind, but he knew that saving Orium was a top priority. Besides, he knew Tatsuki would just soon beat up on him just to prove a point and he'd walk away from this situation sore. Ichigo took off past Dordonii. The Privaran tried to catch up to him, but Tatsuki got in his way and drove her elbow into Dordonii's chest and stopped him, sending him back a bit. She had allowed Ichigo to get away. Now it was just her and the mustached and goateed Arrancar. Not bad, Chika. Your skill is certainly powerful, but if you think you can defeat me so easily, you have another thing coming. Dordonii told her. I said stop calling me Chika. Tatsuki raged. Kaso Kajo. Pyre Bullet. Standing away from Dordonii, Tatsuki used the same motion she would to use Kaso Kabushi, but instead of the flames staying in her fist, they ejected from her glove and fired forward towards Dordonii. Tatsuki missed considerably and soon found Dordonii slamming her in the gut with his own roundhouse kick. Tatsuki went stumbling back, but gained aerial control and landed on her feet again. Her body wasn't nearly as durable as a Soul's or a Soul Reaper's, so something that iPhone hadn't taught her that Yoriyuki had taken into consideration, was learning how to master aerial control. To avoid bumps and bruises caused by harsh landings, Tatsuki was taught how to gain control of her body when sent through the air at high velocities, which she instrumented now. Dordonii leapt at Tatsuki just as she was gaining her footing and attacking with a straight arm punch at her head. Tatsuki dodged to the left and smashed her elbow into Dordonii's extended shoulder before following up with her foot. Tatsuki turned her body while still in midair. She opened her palm. Keshitsudama. Plasma ball, a medicine ball-sized ball of flame formed in Tatsuki's palm, which she then chucked at Dordonii like a baseball. The Arrancar surprisingly stopped Tatsuki's attack with the palm of his hand. Tatsuki landed, surprised. What was that you were saying, Chika, about being stronger than me, Chika? Dordonii asked. It seems you are not as strong as you think. But of course, this is not the full extent of your power, is it, Chika? Tatsuki was surprised. Dordonii could tell. You should not hold back against someone like me. If you think these fancy martial arts skills of yours will be enough to stop me, then you are sorely mistaken. I don't need my full power to beat a loser like you. Tatsuki shouted, clawing out in front of her position with her right arm. I'll beat you to a pulp without it, Don Panini. She took a left lead stance, but tucked her right arm in tight to her body and tensed the knuckles in her left fingers. My name is Dordonii. He shouted. Do I look a delicious sandwich to you? Then stop calling me Chika. Tatsuki shouted. I call you a Chika because to me you are a Chika. Dordonii shouted. I am not. Tatsuki shouted. I'm 15. I'm a Nina. Nina. Senorita is fine too. But calling me Chika makes it sound like you think I'm a sweet and cuddly elementary schoolgirl. I refuse to use my full power on a guy who underestimates me like that. She raged. How unfortunate. Dordonii said calmly. He then reappeared behind Tatsuki with Sonito. She pivoted and blocked his incoming kick with the back of her left arm. If you will not show me your true power, then I will just have to force you to use it, Chika. I said don't call me that. Tatsuki took a right jab at Dordonii, but she missed as he dropped onto his back like a crab and then stuck out his leg to knock Tatsuki off balance, but she leapt into the air with both her legs, tucking them in close. Kane Ryu. Tatsuki shouted. She twisted through the air, engulfed in her own flaming aura and smashed into the floor. Dordonii dodged with Sonito. Tatsuki stood up and looked in either direction to try and figure out where he disappeared to. His foot in her back made it painfully clear. Tatsuki staggered forward and then found an underhand punch driven into her solar plexus followed by a karate chop to the back of her head. Tatsuki hit the ground. She pushed off the ground and somersaulted backwards through the air as Dordoniai came in to try and stomp her into the ground. She caught him in the corner of her eye as she flipped over him. Tatsuki broke her balled-up state and thrust her fist forward. Kaso Kajo. She missed again and Dordoniai appeared at her position at her right flank. Tatsuki dropped to the ground to avoid his swift chop to her cranium. Tatsuki focused all of her Ryotsu to use it as an attack. Netsuha. The heat wave burned towards Dordoniai, but it did nothing more than make him sweat a little. What do you think I am, a bowl of chilled sopa? Dordoniai asked, shrugging off Tatsuki's attack. While she was still her energy, Dordoniai held up his hands with the backs facing his eyes. He extended his index fingers and pinky fingers outwards and began to gather energy. Zero. Tatsuki saw the red flash and prepared a countermeasure to protect herself. She drew energy in and flushed out in a small area. Jikokuo Abar. She declared. The raging inferno that had turned Jirobo Ikanzaka well done and crispy was now being used as a defensive measure to stop Dordoniai's Zero. Unfortunately, it wasn't nearly powerful enough to stop Dordoniai's entire attack, and Tatsuki got blasted through the wall by the remainder of the attack and fell down into the wide, green-walled room. She flipped through the air and let her right leg skid along the wall and used it as leverage to push off and waited for Dordoniai to enter into the room. Tatsuki was bleeding from a burn in her stomach and the fabric was wearing rather badly on her shirt, making her bra partially visible. Dordoniai entered into the room and appeared in front of Tatsuki. You survived my Zero better than I expected you to, Chika, but surely you can see that you cannot defeat me without the use of your true power. After all, I am overpowering you and I still haven't used my release form. Dordoniai reminded her. I don't need my full power to beat you. Tatsuki shouted. She charged down Dordoniai again. It's useless. Dordoniai told her and drove his knee into Tatsuki's gut. She went flipping back and landed on her hands and knees like a cat rising up from the ground, stretching. She got up onto her feet only for Dordoniai to come back at her. Show me your true power, Chika. Dordoniai delivered a firm kick to Tatsuki's abdomen, sending her tumbling along the ground. Tatsuki landed face down in the dirt. Tatsuki began to push up off the ground. I guess I have no choice. Her eyes lit on fire. Fine then. Ryotsu exploded from Tatsuki as she began to slowly rise onto her feet. Tatsuki spread her right arm out, creating a large flaming wing extending out her back, and then extended out her other arm, and the same thing happened. Her gloves caught fire and Tatsuki's hands took the form of four-fingered claws. Her wings ceased flaming and took the form of liquidized flame, resembling bat wings. A long, magma-like reptilian tail, with spikes, shot out from behind Tatsuki. It was superficial, an extension of her spiritual power. As with her hands, liquidized flame also formed around Tatsuki's shoes, taking the form of clawed feet. Tatsuki's eyes were still aglow with flame as she turned to face Dordoniai. She held up her right hand, bending her knuckles so that her nails lay against her palm. Hap now? Tatsuki inquired. This is my true power. Her demeanor was eerily calm. Ichigo, if he saw her like this, would wonder if this was still the same girl he had known for so many years. To be honest, I was hoping to win this fight without fully using this power. Tatsuki told him. You see, I can't quite fully control it yet. What do you mean? Dordoniai asked, confused. Your Ryotsu is not unstable and is quite fierce. How is it your power is uncontrollable? My power is called Ryu Koze. Dragon Force, the strength of the powerful mythical beast supposedly flows through my very blood, or so we in the martial arts world would like to believe. This is its true form, Kataki no Ryu. Form of the dragon, Tatsuki stated. Fear has always played a key role in my gaining of strength, and the fear produced here is the fear of this very power. This power makes it hard to resist giving into my anger and my rage. Back in the Soul Society, when I fought Ikanzaka Jirobo, that was the first step I took to learning that this form existed. I was enthralled when I unlocked it, but soon became scared to use it. For you see, if I lose control, Tatsuki said, her artificial tail twitching, my power has a mind of its own. Tatsuki disappeared in an instant and reappeared behind Dordonii. He turned only for Tatsuki to let drive her magma-like claw into the side of his gut, piercing straight through his iero and out the other end. She swiftly pulled out her arm and then kicked Dordonii all the way across the room, leaving a burning footprint in his chest. Tatsuki drew in a deep breath and let loose a sonic shout that wound up sounding like a dragon's war cry. The sound waves smashed against Dordonii and impacted him on the opposite wall. Neigiki no Ryu, the cry of the dragon. My very voice can be used to shake my opponents to their core. A wide smile swept across Dordonii's face. He was enchanted by Tatsuki's fearsome power. Your power is simply wondrous, Chika. He cackled. This is what I've been waiting for. Now, he whipped out his Zanpakuto, behold my true power. Whirl, Giralda. Dordonii released his form, revealing bird-like cyclones around him and extra armor around his arms and legs. How do you like it, Chika? Isn't it fearsome? I'm not gonna say it again. Tatsuki was suddenly behind Dordonii, charging a blast of fire in her palm. Don't call me Chika. I'm 15. Dordonii turned towards Tatsuki at the last second and got a fireball to the face, causing him to cough. By the time he recovered, he noticed that a ring of fire had formed around him. In the next instant a tornado of flame erupted around the Privaran Espada. Tatsuki stood in the air, quite a ways away, back to her opponent, left hand glowing. Kane no Iki Tatsumaki. Flame Breath Twister, Tatsuki stated as she glanced over her shoulder. It erupts around you and burns you like you've become the victim of a dragon's very breath. There is no escape. You can do nothing except burn. Tatsuki brought her left arm up and swung it, dissipating the flames. Dordonii had been charbroiled to a crisp, same as Jirobo had. Tatsuki flapped to the ground, but did not bother to cancel her Kataki no Ryu. Moments after Dordonii's life force ended, a couple dozen Arrancar formed up behind Tatsuki. All except one looked the same. They had skull-shaped heads and were all the same height, size, and mass. The one who looked different had an elongated mask like a crocodile and horns that wouldn't look out of place on the devil himself. Tatsuki turned around slowly, sensing their presence. You skull-faced bastards want some too, I take it? She asked, holding out her arm same as she had to Dordonii when she first activated her form. I am Rudoban, leader of the Exequias, Rudoban announced. My orders are to kill all intruders. I see, well, sorry to disappoint, but I don't feel like dying today. The wings on her back grew a few inches in height. Before, they were as long as her arm span and no wider. Now, each wing was the size of Zanjutsu's blade in all dimensions. It's started. I hope this doesn't take too long. I can't afford to lose control. If you all want to take me on though, you're welcome to do so. I'm just getting warmed up. As Tatsuki prepared to fight against the Exequias, Uriah was already well into his fight with Privaran number 105, Sairachi Sanderwichi. Uriah and Shinji were working on a tag team basis and in a game of rock/paper/scissors to determine the winner. Shinji lost. What Uriah didn't know was that this was on purpose. Shinji would let Uriah fight, observe his enemy's moves and then finish Sairachi off once he had seen enough. He felt he could just as easily waltz in and crush her, but he didn't feel like stomping all over Uriah's pride. On top of that, unlike the last two Arrancar, Sairachi seemed more complete, and so Shinji knew she had to have what Lelich called a resurrection. So for the moment, whether or not he had to be the one to flush out her resurrection, Shinji was content to stand on the sidelines and watch Uriah fight for the time being. It was at the point that Sairachi revealed that she tricked Uriah to destroying a lot of the pillars, allowing her to wield her weapon indefinitely, that Shinji stepped in. He did so by taking Sakanade and cutting through the tut cord on Sairachi's yo-yo-like weapon. I think that'll just about do it, Shinji said, standing on air. Hey, hold on now, I didn't tag out. Uriah shouted. I know. I'm choosing to tag in, so make that a mark on your Quincy pride and let me handle this now. You had your turn, now it's mine, Shinji said. Uriah didn't seem happy about it, but subsided just the same. Very well. So what are you going to do, Miss Arrancar? I just cut the cord of your weapon clean off. You can't attack me like that now, can you? Why don't you hurry up and release your Zanpakuto like a good little girl and take your step out of the kiddie pool and into the raging ocean? Shinji asked. Sairachi sneered, but realized that if Shinji could so easily cut the cord of her weapon that she would have no chance trying to take him on barehanded. Rip, she sneered, Galandrina. Large wings sprouted from Sairachi's back. They each had 10 crescent-shaped blades on them in place of feathers. Her mask became a beak-like headpiece with a large, feathery mane protruding from it, covering most of her body and trailing past her legs. She also gained a long, prehensile tail along her back. Large pieces of armor that resembled the disc of her sealed state formed around her shoulders. In addition, her arms became long and slender, with large claws like bird talons. Don't take me lightly. Got it over, bite. She shouted at Shinji. Wasn't planning on it. He grinned. While the unofficial leader of the Vizards prepared to fight the female Privarin, Rukia and Kayan had now finally reached an interesting juncture within Las Noches. They had just run up a flight of stairs and were now, from the look of things, outside. In front of them was a building with a green roof. Wait, we're outside? Rukia asked. Kayan looked curiously at the area around them. He then sucked on the tip of his index finger and held it up. No wind, he said. Obviously we're not. He looked up at the sky. The clouds aren't moving either. It's like it's painted on and illuminated by an artificial substance. Both Rukia and Kayan heard clapping and both were alerted to a figure standing against the now ajar doorway across the walkway Rukia and Kayan were standing on. It was a female Arrancar with long blue hair and fit physique. How very astute, she said. Mia. Kayan glared. He began walking towards her, hand already on his Zanpakuto. Rukia followed closely. To fly at an opponent at this range was a bad idea in his mind since he didn't have supreme speed like individuals such as Byakuya, Stefan, or even the fabled goddess of Flash, Yuriyuki. I'm so happy to see you, Kayan-kun. Mia said with a delighted grin. Her cheeks were red. Rukia felt very uneasy. Kayan Dano, who is this? Ah, well if it isn't Rukia-chan. Mia glanced down at her. Your Ryotsu is quite, Mia's lips curved upwards, delicious. Kane put his arm out in front of Rukia. Leave Rukia out of this, Mia, your quarrel is with me. Oh, but she is involved. After all, you brought her here didn't you? You brought her to show me that I've been replaced, haven't you? Mia asked with her hand up by her eye. Kayan Dano, what is she talking about? Rukia demanded to know. She was very on edge. Mia's mere presence already made her uncomfortable and Kayan's familiarity with the enemy only made things worse. Her name is Mia Arururi, Kayan told Rukia coldly, she's the Septima Espada. Apparently, she has some sort of connection to Miyako's memories. Oh, why such contempt? Mia asked, pursing her lips and acting all innocent. Aren't you happy to see me? The only feeling I feel when I see you is churning sensation in my stomach that makes the bile rise in my throat. Kayan glared as he ripped out his Zanpakuto from its sheath. This time we finished things for good. You're so violent, Kayan-kun. Mia said and smiled in a fashion that eerily reminded Rukia of Jin. I like that. Kayan Dano. Rukia squeaked, uneasy. Rukia, I want you to head on without me. Kayan told her. What? Kayan Dano, that's crazy. If she's an Espada then. Mia and I have a score to settle. Kayan said. Somewhere, Miyako is inside her somewhere and I must free her. My, how chivalrous. Mia flirted. Enough. Kayan shouted, losing his temper. His Ryotsu flared. I will not allow you to poison Miyako's memory in front of me any longer. He charged forward and attempted to slash Mia. She drew out her blade and blocked his attack. Kayan pushed down with force and Mia pushed back with that same aroused smile on her face. Rukia, get going and don't look back. Kayan told her. Hi. Rukia leapt off the walkway and down to the sands and continued her journey on foot. I'd rather not settle this out here, why don't you come inside my den? It's much more spacious in there. Mia told Kayan. Like hell, how do I know it's not booby-trapped or something? Kyan asked. I wouldn't dare marry you with such tactics. If anything's going to damage you, it'll be me or my blade, simple as that. Mia told him. Fine. Kyan said. At least if we're inside my riot, so should be suppressed by the walls. I will not ask for aid of any form. I will settle things between Mia and me one way or another. I will not fail, even if I have to take her down with me. Kyan and Mia went inside the building and Mia shut the door. Now no one will disturb us. We can fight each other endlessly in this enclosed space. Mia told Kyan. You can quit the cheeriness and acts. I told you in our last encounter that your form no longer matters to me. I told you that I would kill you no matter your appearance or your origins. Kyan said. So why don't you just shut your mouth and we'll settle this naturally, with our weapons doing all of the talking for us. Rankle the seas and skies, Nijibana. Kyan whipped out his shikai and held it motionless like someone would hold a guitar. Now where's the fun in that? Talking during the fight is the best part, because it lets me know how effective my actions are. Now, glide across the valley, Hagani Range. Mia held up the shikai that belonged to Miyako. Let's go, Kyan-kun. Mia used Sonito and disappeared and reappeared behind Kyan, attacking him with her weapon. Kyan turned and blocked the lower end of her staff with the pointed tip of Nijibana. He then flicked his wrist upwards and created an updraft of water, knocking Mia into the air. With a fierce look, Kyan flipped Nijibana in his hands so that the speared end was pointing forward, then he spun it back around and caused the already created wave to crash down on Mia. The blue-haired espada was too skilled for Kyan to trap her so easily, and with her borrowed shikai created an updraft at gale force speeds to blow the water away. Kyan appeared behind Mia and she sonitoed forward into the side of his attack. She then leapt back at him with a berserk smile on her face and swung Hagani Range down and caused a small whirlwind to burst towards Kyan. With speeds so fast that it was blink and you'll miss it, Kyan created a wave of water, sent it out, called it back and then spun Nijibana in front of him. Ajisai Dai Kojui. The whirlpool overtook Mia's little dust devil and Mia, to counter, did a similar motion with Hagani Range, only to realize she was being overpowered. One of the simplest facts of Zanpakuto combat, the power of an attack is amplified 1,000-fold when you know the name of the attack. Kyan said coldly. His whirlpool overtook Mia and she went crashing into the wall. She got up fairly quickly though and she seemed to be enjoying herself. Simply splendid, Kyan-kun. Mia said with a smile. You've improved so greatly. You weren't nearly this skilled the last time we fought. When you found me the last time my reflexes were a little dull because I was tired from training, but now I am at full strength and I will overpower and defeat you, Mia. Kyan declared as he spun Nijibana up above his head. Is that what you think? You think just because you're at full strength you have what it takes to beat me? Mia asked. She laughed at the prospect. I don't think so. She disappeared again and the next thing Kyan knew, Mia's staff was being sent whizzing at his head. He ducked underneath it only for Mia to switch the staff to her opposite hand, holding the staff down by its lowest end and then whacked him in the ankle. The pain was so intense and Kyan toppled to the floor. Holding the end of the staff that was close to her with both hands, Mia whacked the ground with her staff, causing several gusts of wind to blast towards Kyan. With his still hurting ankle, Kyan wasn't able to get out of the way completely and the spinning of the whirlwind dragged him into the center and through some pillars. Kyan sat up. The fight had just begun and he was already hurting, though the heavy debris that had fallen on top of him was more of a cause for his current predicament than anything else. Mia walked up to him, twirling Hagani Range with only the thumb, middle, and index finger of her right hand. Shall I tell you a story, Kyan-kun? Mia asked. Story? Kyan asked as he tried to get up. It's the story of how I came to be. It is the story of how and why I, Mia Aruruari, exist. Kyan didn't say anything, but continued to make his way to his feet. I'll take your silence as a yes. Mia said and began. You see, it all started 40 years ago when Aizen-sama created Metastasia. It was a hollow capable of stealing the power of Soul Reapers and merging with them. Do you remember the last Soul Reaper Metastasia absorbed, Kyan-kun? Mia asked with a smile on her face. Miyako. Kyan realized, wide-eyed. Correcta. Mia said with a gleaming expression. She switched her weapon to her opposite. If you also recall, Metastasia had eaten your Zanpakuto, thereby gaining information on how it was used, though it could do little with that information without having control of your body, but instead of being able to absorb you, you were able to defeat Metastasia. Mia switched Hagenirange back to her right hand. His body returned to Hueco Mundo with Miyako's consciousness still within him, as she was the last Soul Reaper he absorbed. Neither had perished as you only destroyed the body, not the soul. Then, as the joined pair lay there in the sand, for what seemed to be forever, along came a lone Arrancar, a Jillian named Araniro. Mia switched to her other hand. Araniro was Aizen-sama's ninth espada with the power to grow indefinitely thanks to a power Araniro had called Glotonaria. Using that power, Metastasia was swallowed up. However, the absorption was the same as any hollow devouring another when Jillians are formed. Mia stopped spinning her weapon and thrust one end of it into the ground. In other words, Miyako's consciousness was still within Metastasia when he was absorbed, and when that consciousness found itself being absorbed and hive-minded, it fought back to gain control and not become a lost existence. It fought against Araniro and sought to become the dominant mind. It was a long and painful struggle. You would have been very proud of your little Miyako as she struggled for control. Her mind was strong after all, since her last memories were on the field of battle. Like a regular hollow, she had regrets and desires, unwilling to be lost to the world. In the end, Miyako succeeded, but not completely. In order to break Araniro, she used all of her willpower to do so, to become the dominant mind, but the hollows absorbed by Araniro, the mindless ones, overtook what little sanity she had remaining, resulting in an imperfect fusion. Miyako became another being entirely. Fusing with so many hollows, her hair turned the lovely blue shade of my delightful locks. Mia said, rubbing a few strands of her long hair with her left hand. Because of her loss of sanity and the hollows that tainted her, Miyako became irrational and unpredictable. Tsunkan believed that Aizen-sama had lost an espada because Miyako had taken over and become a mindless monster, but Aizen-sama did not think so. Miyako's mind was feral. She had no idea of her identity or purpose. When Aizen-sama asked what her name was, her response was Mia, followed by a scream for the inability to remember her full name. Aizen-sama, realizing Miyako's potential, took her back and nurtured her. He realized who and what she was, and through experimentation managed to return much of her sanity, but during the process Miyako's personality and being became a thing of the past. The three beings that created what she was now, Metastasia, Araniro, and herself, began to cohesively bond together to create a functioning body and a new identity. And during this process, I was born. Mia picked her staff back up and began to spin it very slowly. Now you know my history. I am a creature brought about by the fusion of Araniro, Metastasia, and beloved Miyako. I am all three and yet none of them at the same time. I am an independent identity with the power of two vice-captain level Soul Reapers, an espada, and a body-snatching hollow. My body once belonged to Araniro. I retain all of Miyako's memories and skills, and my physique and measurements are her own. Miyako ejected 4 tentacles from her back. I have Metastasia's tentacles, though they've lost their powers of absorption. And finally, I have my own unique power, formed during the experiments when I was given an independent identity. If I had been subject to a better host, perhaps Aizen-sama would have given me a higher rank, but what's past is past. A Tremere-sama recognizes my skill, and I remained on the espada and was given an increase in rank to the Septima espada, putting down the original 7th and 8th down a rank. Mia smiled kindly and then spoke in a kind, gentle voice. Kion, help me, she said with pursed lips. Mia then laughed. You should have seen your pathetic face when you thought I was Miyako. She laughed harder. Kion finally got to his feet. So, you are an independent entity all on your own then? Miyako is not a true part of you? Kion asked. Isn't that what I just finished saying? Mia asked and stopped spinning her Zanpakuto so that it ran perpendicular to her bust line. I see, good. Kion said, and then began to raise his Ryutsu. Mia was slightly surprised by this. If you are not really Miyako, then I have no reason to hold back even an inch. If she were somewhere inside you, I'd try to bring you out, maybe save myself some grief or talk with her one more time, but now that I know that you are not her any longer, there's no reason for me to believe such things. Kyan lifted his head to look Mia in the eye. Mia. I'm going to defeat you thoroughly. I will allow Miyako to be released from the hell inside you. Mia sighed. Your heroic speeches are starting to grow quite boring, Kyan-kun. But I don't mind. Soon the only thing you'll be able to say is to call me your mistress. Mia sealed Miyako's shikai. I'm going to end this between us. Now that you're in my territory, I'm not going to hold back either. I'll release my true form and turn you into my slave. Mia shouted with a crazed grin. Seduce. Mia declared and then thrust her sword into her body where her hollow hole was. Succubo. Succubus, Mia began to transform instantly. 2 horns sprouted out of Mia's head like the horns of an underworld demon. Large white, organic wings shot out of Mia's back. They were bat-shaped. Mia's hakama were replaced by 2, white, long, leather, high heel, boots that hugged tightly to Mia's skin. Her sleeves shrank. Now they only covered halfway between Mia's elbow and wrist and halfway between Mia's shoulder and elbow. Mia's hair was out of her eyes and the hollow fragments around her left eye could now be more easily seen. Mia's nether regions were barely hidden from view by her bloomers, if you could even call what they were bloomers, since only the necessary areas seemed to be covered by the cloth. An armored breastplate hugged at Mia's bosom. The plate, while tight around her chest to the point where there were several spikes poking at her sacks of flesh, though not penetrating the arrow, left little to the imagination and gave Kyan, or anyone else who had ever seen Mia's release, quite the view. Mia's plate only covered her breast area. Skin showed everywhere else. Mia seemed very unabashed that her mammary glands were uncovered. She either didn't care or they were like that on purpose. Mia had no weapon to speak of. So? Mia asked, straddling one leg up the other and winking at Kyan. Like what you see? To be continued. Chapter 64, Kyan's Resolve, End to the Agony. Third-person POV. While Kyan prepared to face off against Mia's rather revealing release form, Shinji was lazily battling Sairachi. He was hardly even trying and she wasn't able to land a single hit with her large wings as she attempted to slash him to ribbons. Shinji landed on top of a recently sliced apart pillar. You know, for someone who used to be an Espada, you're really not that strong. You little worm. Sairachi this time sent her feathers out from her wing to attack Shinji. The Vizard just sighed. He lifted his sword to lazily block Sairachi's feathers and slashed each one that headed towards him. He didn't even move from the pillar he was standing on. This is such a waste of my time. I know you were giving Uriah trouble, but I didn't think I was this much stronger than you. Sheesh. Shinji was alerted to the blades coming back to Sairachi's wing. He used Shunpo to dodge the returning of them so that he didn't get cut. If that's all you can do, then I've seen enough. Shinji said, and the next thing Sairachi knew, Shinji's foot was in her back. The kick was so forceful that it knocked her clean to the floor onto her face. Shinji then disappeared in a flash and used many different Shunpo steps, faster than Sairachi could react, to cut her several times. He got her across the left side of her abdomen, the center of her abdomen, the back of her right shoulder, along her left shoulder and then through the back, just underneath her bust, in that order as he passed by her, ending the last attack with a stab rather than a slash. Sairachi's resurrection was forcefully disengaged. Uriah pushed up his glasses with a look on his face as if to say impressive. Shinji then began to walk away from Sairachi. Let's go, he told Uriah. Angered Sairachi grabbed his ankle. Shinji stopped and looked at her. Just hold on a minute, overbite, she said to him, gritting her teeth. Don't think you're just going to walk away while I still draw breath. Shinji looked at her with pity. What, are you stupid? I beat you, and as the victor the first get to choose whether you live or die. You might be the enemy, but pretty girls should get to live longer than most others. If you manage to recover from those wounds, you should think about what you're doing and see if you can't make use of your regained sanity. You Arrancar are more humanistic than you care to give yourselves credit for. Damn you. Don't you get it? If you fail, you die. The strong devour the weak, that's how it works around here. Sairachi grit her teeth. Yeah, well, that's not exactly my problem now, is it? I came here to rescue a friend, so if you don't mind, I need to be on my way. Shinji then dug the heel of his shoe firmly, but not violently, into the back of Sirachi's wrist to make her body automatically react to let go of his ankle, and then took off, leaving the Gothic Privarin to wither in her despair and defeat. "Damn you! I don't need your chivalry," Sirachi grumbled to herself. "Do you hear me, Soul Reaper?" she shouted at Shinji. "I don't need your pity or your idealism, so come back and finish me off." Shinji ignored her and he and Uriu kept walking. "The way she's acting, you'd almost think sparing her life was a fate worse than death." Shinji rolled his eyes. "In their world, that may be so," Uriu replied. As the duo walked off, leaving Sirachi to wither, Sale watched them go from a monitor in his quarters. He was going to alert the Exequias to gather Sirachi up, but it seemed that they were still engaged in combat with Tatsuki, who was putting up quite a spirited defense. "Now that's the kind of specimen whose corpse I would love to carve up," Sale chuckled to himself. As Sirachi lay on the ground, her mind warped back to her past. She remembered when she was on top. She was one of the strongest. She was Aizen's favorite subordinate. She, Dordonii, Mia, and Gantenbin, they were all that were left of the original Espada. The other originals were foolish. They revolted against their replacements and were cut down by prominent figures in the Espada like Grimjo, Ulquiorra and Yami. The other Privarin took their demotions gracefully, understanding that they should be thankful that they at least had their lives. Sirachi remembered when Talbumasuk took over the Arrancar army. He, unlike Aizen, didn't regard the Privarin as rejects, or at least that was how he acted. Every Arrancar was a valuable soldier, each bringing something unique to the table. However, without her soul chain, Sirachi felt she might as well be just a normal human. She ground her nails into the tile, angry. Shinji had left her to wither with these wounds and no power. Talbumasuk, lenient of failure or not, would surely do away with a useless Arrancar. Sirachi did not want to be useless. She wanted to fight. She wanted to be a soldier. She wanted to be of some use somehow. Suddenly she felt her body being lifted off the ground as a quartet of hands helped her up. "Are you all right, Sirachi-san?" Loli and Mainoli were helping the Privarin to her feet. Sirachi recognized them as Mia's Fraxion. "What are you two doing here?" Sirachi asked. "You are Mistress' friend," Mainoli told her. "But, I no longer have any power," Sirachi lamented. "I'm useless. I'm as weak as a human." "Mistress won't care," Loli told her as she slung one of Sirachi's arms over her shoulders. "Besides, maybe a Tremere-sama will fix you up if we ask nicely." "But I don't have my soul chain," Sirachi stated. "A Tremere-sama isn't nearly as gifted as Aizen-sama in making miracles. Either way, taking you back with us is better than letting you lie here to die. You're our comrade, Sirachi-san," Mainoli told her. Sirachi felt a sense of comfort from Loli and Mainoli's willingness to assist her, despite her uselessness. She remembered when Araniro became Mia and, when Sirachi was kicked out of the Espada and Mia remained on it, that Mia was the only Espada who would look at the Privarin with any form of sympathy. The Privarin and the Septima had a history together, and Sirachi was happy that, despite her weakened state, that Mia was not about to let it go to waste. True, Mia didn't know herself that Sirachi had fallen since she was in the thick of battle with Kayan, but the fact that her Fraxion were acting on her behalf was comforting. Sirachi realized that, at least for now, that things would be okay. From the monitor room, as Sale watched this occur, he simply smiled like the slimy bastard that he was before refocusing on Tatsuki. The high school tomboy, in her true form, had just finished wiping the floor with Rudoban's cronies and now looked directly at the Exequias leader. "If that's all your flunkies can do, defeating you shouldn't be much harder," Tatsuki told him. During the battle, a lava-like, spiked spine had extended out of Tatsuki's back, connecting her wings to her tail. "Ha! You think you can defeat me that easily? Defeating my subordinates is pointless." Rudoban prepared to release his sword. "Grow, Arbol." Tree roots extended into the ground and Rudoban sprang up from the ground with branches growing out of his back. He looked like he had fused with a tree stump. The skulls on the branches twitched as more of the skull-faced Arrancar that Tatsuki had defeated before appeared and grew. "That's it, that's all you can do?" Tatsuki asked, unimpressed. She extended her wings out wide and then flapped them forward, creating an arc of flame. Sutaraburo Oyaku. Burning flash, the arc tore right through Rudoban's Calaveras, but only thudded against the base of his resurrection. Such power! Rudoban marveled at Tatsuki's power. So, Tatsuki looked Rudoban with a lazy look. What's it going to take to defeat you? Rudoban grunted and growled and then opened his large jaw a bit to release a Siro. Jikokuo Abar. Using the flaming inferno as a barrier, Tatsuki protected herself from the Siro. This time though, the Siro wasn't powerful enough to break through her flames. However, in the time she took to gain footing, Rudoban had summoned more Calaveras. The skull-faced minions ran towards Tatsuki. There were 20 of them in total. Tatsuki charged forward and crushed the head of one with her bare fist. She flipped forward and kicked her leg through the air and decapitated 5 other Calaveras with her foot and stabbed one in the throat with her tail. Kane Ryu. Whipping around in a circular motion, counterclockwise, Tatsuki tore straight through 2 more of the Calaveras. I have to figure out a way to get rid of the leader soon. I won't be able to substantiate this form for long before I lose control. Tatsuki thought to herself as she hovered in the air through use of her wings. 2 smaller wings jutted out from her lower back and her tail obtained 2 split ends. Won't be much longer now. I need to end this. She turned to face Rudoban and disappeared with a flash of agility. She appeared right behind him. Kaso Kabushi. Tatsuki punched the guy right in the back and dislodged him from his tree stump. His resurrection completely fell apart. Inconceivable. If Rudoban had eyes, they'd be wide-eyed. How can you, a mere human, have so much power? I don't rightfully know myself. Tatsuki said, flapping her wings. Perhaps it's the source of my power, perhaps it's my determination, or perhaps you're just weak. Tatsuki extended her arm out and spoke. Netsuke Kudama. Thermonuclear sphere, a large, red-orange, circular barrier formed around Rudoban. And Nani. He had no idea what was going on. Tatsuki clenched her hand and the entire sphere immolated with the kind of intensity one would expect from Ryujinjaka, though not nearly as powerful. Rudoban was nothing but ashes when Tatsuki's attack finished itself. Tatsuki sighed and prepared to power down. However, before she could, her entire body pulsed. And no, am I too late? Tatsuki dropped to the ground. She appeared to be struggling to keep her sanity, her eyes, hands, feet, and back, still awash with fire. She flailed back and forth as if she were a man trying not to turn into a werewolf. I can't control it. Tatsuki dropped to her knees and screamed. Her scream became more and more draconic with every passing second. When it ended, Tatsuki stood up. Her pupils had turned black, and were crescent-shaped like a lizard. Her sclera was yellow. Her arms, legs, wings and tail were no longer lava-like. They were now a dark violet, matching the color of Tatsuki's hair, except for the claws and spines which were dark black. Transformation complete. A distorted version of Tatsuki's voice spoke. Objective, rescue Orium. Eliminate all complications. With a single flap of wings, Tatsuki shot up from the ground and tore up through the ceiling. She continued to break through the floors until she sensed Ryutsu and tore in the direction of it, seeking it like a lost boat towards a lighthouse. Tatsuki did not find Orium. Instead, she encountered someone else, Privarin Espada 106, Luppy Antiner. What's this? A visitor. It's rare I have company. In fact, it's never. This will prove entertaining. Target confirmed, Tatsuki spoke. Ryutsu indicates strongest enemy encountered thus far. Proceeding with extreme caution. It doesn't matter what kind of caution you approach me with. Luppy said and grabbed his Zanpakuto. I'll kill you. Strangle, Trapatera. While Tatsuki prepared to face off against Luppy, Kyokaku finally managed to get out of a hallway and into a large room. This sure ain't as hell where they'd be keeping Orium. Kyokaku sighed. Man, this just pisses me off. She rubbed her head. Then perhaps you'd like a chance to blow off some steam. Kyokaku then noticed that she had company. From a hidden door in an adjoining room, a man with pink hair and square-rimmed glasses stepped in. Ah, Finally some entertainment, Kyokaku beamed, hand on her hip, other hand at her side. What's your name, Pinky? She asked. Hierarchically I am Espada number 9, but my full name is Sail Aporo Grands. Sail stated. An Espada huh? Kyokaku chuckled. This ought to be worth some entertainment then. I've been looking for a real challenge these days. Oh believe me, Sail held up his hands, I'm no threat to you. I'm a researcher. When I come out on the field, as I am now, it's to gather data on different spirit patterns. I'm to Lost No Chase was the research bureau is to the Soul Society. To be perfectly honest, I'm terrible at fighting. Do you think I'm some kind of idiot? Kyokaku asked. If you were really bad at fighting you wouldn't be an Espada. Nothing gets by you, does it? Sail said, cupping his chin with his left hand and his left elbow with his right hand, but seeing as I'm only ranked number 9, surely that tells you how much my skills pale in comparison to the rest. I'm only interested in collecting rare spirit particles, and data from a member of the noble Shiba family would be quite beneficial to my research. If you'd be willing to trust me, I think we'll both benefit. Me trust an enemy? Were you dropped on your head when you were born? Kyokaku drew out her Zanpakuto. I didn't come all this way just to have tea and chat with your kind. I came here to kick ass. So if you don't get out of my way in the next 5 seconds I will blow you to bits. Understand? You want a sample of my spirit energy, then you can gather it while I start turning this place into what would look like the aftermath of a terrorist bombing. Kyokaku flipped her blade underneath her wrist. Explode with intensity, Kyode Bakuden. Kyokaku's mechanical gauntlet formed up along her right arm. Are you ready, Mr. Scientist? Kyokaku asked. Meanwhile, Kayan and Mia had already jump-started their fight. Kayan had already discovered that Mia was much faster, stronger and defensive in her release mode. She had shrugged off his Dayton Enegama like it was nothing and countered his Ajisai Dai Kojui with her Zero, which was white in color. What Kayan didn't know was that his mind was subconsciously getting distracted by Mia's beauty and he was unable to focus his mind properly. What's wrong, Kayan-kun? Mia asked as she appeared dangerously close behind him to the left. Kayan took a swing, creating a wave, but Mia was now hanging off his right shoulder. I was wrong, you are handsome up close. Kayan made to shake her off. Get your hands off me! He shouted. Mia flapped back with her wings and hovered in the air. With each flap her breasts bounced and Kayan, like any other man, found himself hard-pressed not to look at Mia's jiggling jugs. They were distracting, but not distracting enough for Kayan to forget that Mia was his enemy. Namitsubara. Kayan shot forward the condensed spray of water at Mia. He was surprised when the water jerked off to the right. He was certain he had aimed at the dead center of Mia's body. Even more surprising, rather than dodging the attack this time, a pair of tentacles, reminding Kayan of Metastasia, shot out above and below Mia's left wing and seemed to be absorbing part of the Reishi from his attack. Kayan felt Mia's Ryatsu increase a little. You won't beat me if you can't focus, Kayan-kun. Mia said and disappeared. The next thing Kayan knew, she was latched onto his body from behind. Her arms and legs wrapped around Kayan as if Mia was piggybacking him. Kayan tried to throw her off him, but soon found himself feeling incredibly weak. Mia's warm, arousing embrace seemed to be draining the Ryatsu straight from his body. I was right, your Ryatsu is delicious, Kayan-kun. Mia purred. What is this that I'm feeling? Kayan thought to himself. I have nothing but contempt for this woman, but, my body, it's reacting to her. She's sucking me dry. Mia let go of Kayan and then planted her feet in his back. Her high heels really hurt as they dug into the weakened vice-captain's spine. Kayan went flying head first into the dirt. Mia laughed promiscuously. What's the matter? Is that all you have, Kayan-kun? That's not satisfying. Damn it. I can't focus. I need to do something about this. Just looking at her is too distracting. Kayan then thought about what he said. Wait. Look. That's it. Kayan got to his feet and shut his eyes. I just won't look at her. I'll keep my eyes closed and I'll let my sixth sense take care of the rest. Oh, what's the matter, Kayan-kun? Mia whined. Don't you like my body? Mia asked. On the contrary, it's very distracting, Kyan said, unnoticing that he was turning red, and since this is a fight I refuse to let myself be hampered by your appearance. Can you really fight me blind? Mia asked. I think you've just made this fight harder for yourself. She flew at Kyan. Kyan felt her come forward and waited until she was right in his space. Koto Yukinohana. He got Mia right in the spin and then followed up with the 2 follow-up strikes without opening his eyes. The execution was perfect. Mia went sailing into the nearby cylindrical walls. Kyan grinned. I can do this. Eyes still closed, Kyan used his 6th sense to head towards Mia. Seeing him coming, the Septima Espada extended the tentacles out from the right side of her body and sent all 4 at Kyan, attempting to grapple him by the shoulders and upper legs. She was surprised when Kyan deftly dodged to the side. Zero. Mia fired her white zero at Kyan. Kyan heard the declaration and felt the zero coming. He worked up a wave, called it back and spun Nijibana in front of him all in less than 2 seconds. Ajisai Dai Kojui. He heard Mia scream and felt Nijibana connect with her body and pushed Mia up into the ceiling with his attack until he ran out of water. He felt Mia get right in his space using her Sonido. Kyan turned and brought his arms up over his head and hacked down at his right ankle with Nijibana where his left ankle had just been. Mia got swept up in the current and went sailing away from Kyan towards the wall. Mia sprang to her feet and looked at Kyan. His ears were perked and he was trying to listen in and sense Mia's next move. Mia smiled as she licked the blood that had dripped onto her arm. He's really something, but of course I already knew that. I guess it's time I played dirty. Mia adjusted her larynx to use a tactic she knew that, even with his eyes closed, would drive Kyan mad. Kyan. She called out to him using Miyako's voice. As she anticipated, Kyan reacted. He sent a wave of water towards Mia. His violence and contempt reduced his accuracy and it allowed Mia to get within Kyan's space. Kyan, help me, this Arrancar is controlling me. Stop it, Mia. I know you're faking it. Kyan shouted and attacked Mia, but again she dodged. Kyan was really pissed. Kyan, it's me. I'm trying to fight for control. Listen to me. Mia continued to use Miyako's voice. Stop it. Stop using Miyako's voice. Kyan had just about lost it. He attacked Mia in an unrelenting frenzy. Kyan was missing terribly and he knew it. Against his logic and reasoning from before. He opened his eyes. With the anger in his mind running on overdrive when he put Mia down, he wanted to see the expression on her face. He wasn't even realizing how much spirit energy he was expending. Eventually Mia stopped dodging and when Kyan was at a vulnerable point, with Nijibana below his waist level after striking to strike Mia down, she took her opening. Zero. She shot Kyan at point blank. She slammed Kyan right into the wall and nearly outside the building. Kyan was hanging by his left hand, trying to pull himself up. He could only last 2 minutes at most like that. He was surprised when Mia casually came over and grabbed him by the wrist and threw him back inside. You saved me? Kyan asked. Of course. Mia chuckled. You're no good to me if you fall to your death, Kyan-kun. Why must you torture me? If you want to fight me then do it with honor. I abhor your tactics. Kyan glared. That's just how Arrancar fight. Mia said, levitating into the air and laying on her side. Wrong, your ally, the 5th Espada, Nelliel, I've heard, fights with honor. She's not sneaky or underhanded. Why do you stomp on Miyako's memory like that in front of me? Kyan asked. Why not? Mia asked. It makes it easier to defeat you then. Kyan had to think of something. If there was a way to stop Mia from using such obscene tactics he might have a better fighting chance. It would also let him calm down for a bit. She didn't need to rub salt in the wound that Miyako was a part of her. He grinned. How can you truly say you've broken me if you don't fight on my level, with my tactics and only using your brute strength? Wouldn't it mean more to you if you beat me that way? Mia became intrigued by Kyan's words. She laughed that sadistic, flirtatious laugh of hers and stood up, clacking her heels to the ground. You're right, Kyan-kun. I should be more direct with my attacks. Mia wrapped one arm around her bosom and snaked the other down her stomach. You want me to fight you with only my brute strength? I suppose I'll do that. Kyan watched as Mia stuck 2 fingers down her bloomers and began to grope her right breast. Mia's cheeks turned red and she began to wince. Kyan's left eye twitched as he became very disturbed at what he was seeing. He didn't know whether to be disgusted or aroused, though the latter seemed to be winning out if his lower body was any indication. What the hell is she doing in the middle of a fight? Kyan exclaimed. After a few more moments of groping, Mia let out a loud, pleasured moan one would expect to hear from a woman that had just climaxed. Kyan turned red, wondering if he should have even watched her do that. Moments later though he became defensive as Mia's Ryotsu began spiking. The black lining of her white attire turned baby blue and a matching aura formed around Mia. Kyan could have sworn Mia grew 2 inches taller and unmistakably noticed that Mia's bust grew 2 full chest sizes. Mia removed her hand from her nether regions and let her juices drip onto the floor. She then slowly moved her hand in a circle. The wall to her right, Kyan's left, caved in nearby, letting the sunlight flush in. That's not good. Kyan realized. Are you ready for my full power, Kyan-kun? Mia asked. Mia charged forward and drove her knee firmly into Kyan's abdomen. Fluid poured from Kyan's mouth as he went flying. Mia flew around and behind him and put her outspread hand firmly into Kyan's back and then punched him, from behind, with a left hook. As Kyan went reeling, Mia brought her heel over his back before picking Kyan up by the collar and manifesting an energy whip with her right hand. She coiled it around Kyan's neck, choking him. Kyan gasped for air as Mia pressed her foot into his back. Yield, Kyan-kun. Cower before your mistress. Declare your submission. Kyan could feel himself losing air quickly. It wouldn't be long before he'd pass out from lack of oxygen, but, to his surprise, Mia let him go before he got to that point. Of course she would, Kyan realized, she wants me alive and conscious. Mia picked Kyan up by his hair. Kyan was so weakened by her last assault that he could do nothing as he felt Mia begin to suckle on his lips. Kyan could feel the energy from his body draining away ever so slowly. He could barely move. My energy is gone, my body feels numb, I can't fight back at all. See Kyan-kun, this is why I didn't go all out, you simply can't handle all of me. It's a shame I've had to mar you so badly. It's said that I was unable to break you, but you know what they say, love hurts. Mia punched Kyan in the gut. He collapsed to the floor. Mia noticed that his hand was still firmly clenched around Nijibana. You really are stubborn, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to feast upon you now, to the very core of your soul. Mia's tentacles wrapped themselves around Kyan's shoulders and legs. Mia wrapped her arms around Kyan and straddled him. Soon we will be one and all you will ever think about is me. Kyan's mind was elsewhere. He was barely conscious. Miyako, I'm sorry, I tried to save you, but I guess I can't do it. Kyokaku, please forgive your idiot brother. Rukia, I guess we'll have to cancel our wedding. Kyan's energy slowly began to drain out of his body and into Mia as she feasted upon him, but as she did so, Kyan's subconscious floated into another world. He seemed to be swirling about a world of white liquid. It seemed very milky. Kyan found he could move through this world by swimming. Where am I? He wondered. What is this place? Kyan continued to swim through the dense, white, creamy world until he saw a person floating in the world, unconscious. Who is that? Kyan swam towards the person. As he drew closer he recognized the floating individual as she lay suspended on her back, bent over backwards in a shiakusho. Kyan gasped. Miyako. He increased his pace. Kyan cradled her and tried to shake her awake. Miyako. Miyako, wake up. Miyako. Kyan's late wife woke up and looked at him. Kyan. She smiled at him. Miyako. Kyan was so happy to see her. He then recalled the problem with the situation. Wait, Miyako, where are we? What is this place? We're in Mia's subconscious. Miyako said. This is Mia's inner world. Kyan stated, intrigued, looking around. It's kind of bland. She wouldn't want you to see the ugliness it actually is, and trust me when I say you don't want to. Miyako said. But how did I get here? Kyan asked. I can feel everything she does. Although Mia is her own identity, I still flow deep inside of her subconscious, the part you yourself are now inside of. You came here so that you could feel happy as she absorbs your soul. If you wait too long and do not fight back to return, you will forget your purpose and you too will be swallowed up, as have I. Miyako said to him. But what can I do? I failed you, Miyako. Kyan told her, heart heavy. Miyako reached up and put her hand on Kyan's heart. You haven't failed me. You're still alive. As long as you're alive you can keep trying. It's hopeless, she's too strong. Kyan despaired. Miyako was saddened. That's not what the Kyan I know would say. The Kyan I know would keep fighting to the bitter end even if things seemed hopeless. But perhaps, you are missing something in this battle. What do you mean? Kyan asked. Kyan, take my heart. Miyako told him. So that you can fight this monster that is using my body and memories to make you suffer, know that despite her actions that my heart is with you and has been with you since I died. Kyan, I love you. Kyan's despairing gaze and troubled heart finally found solace. Kyan felt empowered and strong as he began to fade from within Mia's mind. Back in reality, Mia was just about to finish destroying Kyan's soul, and submitting him to her when suddenly Kyan reached out and grabbed her wrist. Miyako, thank you, I will definitely save you now. Feeling empowered with Miyako's thoughts and feelings with him, Kyan's almost soulless body became full of vitality and vigor. Kyan's body burst forth with spiritual power as if he was taking back everything Mia had stolen, which was quite a lot. What? Mia immediately tore away from Kyan. She stared at Kyan. This cannot be. Kyan-kun was almost my slave, but now he's standing up, he's full of vitality. What happened? Mia, Kyan told her, it's as you said before, you are Miyako, but at the same time you are not. While you tried to subdue me, my mind floated into your subconscious and I found Miyako within you. Kyan pounded his fist over his heart. Her final thoughts are with me and she gave her heart to me. With Miyako's heart joined together with my sister's and Rukia's, Kyan swung Nijibana forward, poised to fight Mia one more time. This time I will defeat you. You forgot one, Kyan. Oh, yeah, and Nijibana is with me as well. These past 40 years, Miyako's death has bothered me all this time, but no longer. Today I put an end to my suffering once and for all. I won't turn back nor will I hesitate. Behold Mia, this is true power. Bankai. Kyan became surrounded in typhoon of water that burst straight through the roof. As the typhoon began to die down, Kyan was revealed to have not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4. Kyan had no less than 8 replicas of his Shikai rotating around his waist level, the trident points all pointing away from him. In Kyan's hand was yet a 9th Nijibana replica. Nijibana Sora ni Raisenjo. Spear Anthas spiraling to the sky. Bankai. Mia was utterly shocked. How? Her face morphed into one of pure arousal, very arousing. Arouse this! Kyan shouted. He lifted the Nijibana in his hand into the air. The replicas all jutted out away from him and did the same. Dayton Enegama. While Kyan's own trident merely sent out a disk of water, the replicas all traveled with their disks. Mia was hard-pressed to dodge them all and was hit by no less than 4 of them. Kyan got right where she was and drove his trident up towards the sky. Following his command, so did the other tridents, and Kyan drowned Mia in 9 different waves and then brought her down with 9 more. Mia got up and struck Kyan with a tentacle. He blocked. You're making me all wet, Kyan-kun. Mia said, still aroused. Even in the face of death she's still as freaky as ever. How shameless. Kyan thought to himself. He was no longer distracted by Mia. He had full and complete control of himself. Mia charged forward, but a floating trident blocked her path as if it was the weapon's instinct to guard Kyan. Although this was Kyan's first ever time using Bankai, he seemed to understand how it worked. If Lelouch could defeat a powerful opponent with a raw Bankai, then so can I, Kyan told himself. He turned and used Shunpo to get outside Mia's range. This is it, the finisher. He commanded one trident to form itself behind Mia's legs, another behind her arms, and 4 more to lock her arms and legs to the poles of the other 2 tridents. Mia was caught and she knew it. This was the end. Kyan held up his trident with both hands at the base and held it up to the sky. His remaining 2 free tridents formed up on his arms and pointed towards the sky. Water ran up and converged at the tip of the blade, creating a cone shape. The cone seemed to vibrate and spiral, making the water seem to be creating a drill. Tenjin. The water drills grew to the size of small bushes. Tappa. The drills grew larger in size, now as big as sprouted mass of leaves and branches in a coniferous tree. Kyan then let his arms fall forward so that his elbows extended and the base of his trident was level with his chest. Matsu. Tenjin Tappa Matsu equals heaven-piercing pine tree. The drills shot forward followed by a trail of water and blasted Mia straight through in 3 different places. Since these were drills of water and not blades, the damage was, of course, superficial. Kyan knew this, so as his 6 tridents let Mia go and she dropped to the ground, Kyan ran forward with his weapon seeking Mia's heart and lungs. Miyako, I free you now. Kyan rushed forward and plunged his trident right into Mia's chest. Blood poured from her mouth as Kyan pierced right through her bosoms and jammed his trident through both her lungs and the center of her ribcage at the exact same time and poked his trident out through the other side. Mia could feel the life force draining from her body. She vibrated and twitched and convulsed as she felt her world grow dark and she slumped forward into Kyan. With this, Miyako, you can finally rest in peace. Mia lifted her left arm, drenched in blood, and raked it down the side of Kyan's face, her nails scraping along his right cheek. She didn't pierce the skin, she was too weak, too close to death. She tilted her head to look up at Kyan. She spoke in a gentle voice. Thank you, Kyan. She smiled. You are welcome, Miyako. Kyan smiled back. He knew the voice that had spoken to him was hers and that in that moment that her personality was the one in control. Goodbye, Kyan. Miyako said, and then she slumped to the side and Miyako, and Mia with her, died. Watching her go, Kyan could feel his own body weaken too. He had pushed himself very far in his weakened state and his injuries and drained energy were catching up to him. At least I succeeded, before all was lost. Kyan fell over to the side and passed out. End of Chapter 64. Chapter 65, Arisawa Tatsuki, The Demon Within. Third-person POV. Talbumasuk sat on his couch staring at the gigantic monitor that split-screened to many different regions of the palace and watched Mia die only for Kyan to collapse along with her. He also watched Sairachi be carried back by Mainoli and Loli, the Septimus Fraction. Sighing, he rose to his feet. I suppose I will have to pay our little guest a visit. Talbumasuk thought to himself and began to walk out of the room. While Talbumasuk slowly made his way to the other end of the palace, Kyokaka was fighting against Sail, and slowly finding herself struggling as she chucked bomb after bomb at the Novena as though she and Sail were playing a game of one-sided dodgeball. Kyokaka didn't dare approach Sail in close range without a good idea of his combat capabilities and skills, but so far Sail had done nothing but skillfully dodge her attacks with little to no effort. Damn you! Smug bastard! Kyokaka cursed. She readied another bomb while charging Kido energy in her left hand. Hado 63, Reikoho. Sail dodged the Kido and Kyokaka threw a bomb his way. It exploded with a bright flash, blinding Sail, but Kyokaka had long since trained herself to be adjusted to the bright light. She got right behind Sail and flushed her right, gauntlet palm against his back. Kaed Yoteho. Maple Leaf Cannon, she blasted Sail right in the back with a giant bronze, constant beam all the way across the field and into the wall where a bunch of rubble fell on top of it. Kyokaka waited. She never assumed her enemy to be dead, and turning your back on an enemy that might be alive was just asking to be backstabbed. To her disappointment, she hadn't finished Sail off, but to her surprise, she had barely managed to inflict any sort of injury. Sail got up and barring a large singe mark to his back hadn't suffered that much damage. The fuck? Kyokaka sneered, biting her nail. What? You thought your attack blasted me to bits? Punched a hole right through me? Struck me down? Sail asked. You're very foolish. You should have done that attack right from the start if you could. You spent so much time analyzing me that I've had the chance to analyze you. Saol said smugly. Kyokaku watched as her mechanical arm shattered, revealing her sealed Zanpakuto. She couldn't even sense Kyode Bakuden's essence. Tightening her gaze, but not all the while shrugging it off, Kyokaku sheathed her blade. Saol saw that she didn't seem the least bit concerned. So you've analyzed the Reishi composition of my Zanpakuto in the short time I've used it, thereby preventing me from using it at all so long as I am in this room. Pretty freaking cheap, I gotta say, but I guess you need to compensate for your lousy fighting skills. Thing is, I've never relied solely on my Zanpakuto, it's just the fastest way I know how to kick major ass. If I had Bankai I'd be whipping that out every time I found myself pressed for time. I don't have the patience or the desire to waste my time on fights. There are more enjoyable things I find in life, like blowing things up for the fun of it. Kyokaku, knowing Saol would stand there and listen, took a smoke of her pipe. She looked at the shock on his face about how Kyokaku could be so calm. By the look on your face, I suppose you are wondering why I'm not the least bit surprised about all this, or the fact that I figured this all out in the first place. Kyokaku began jerking her wrist up and down as she held her pipe. When you have both a best friend and a captain who are both overprepared, crazy, super intelligent, borderline insane individuals, you tend to pick up a few things about other crazy people like yourself. Although I will say you are not nearly as crazy as the captain of our research department, Kyokaku said and took another smoke of her pipe, or perhaps I've just misjudged you. You dare mock me? Saol grit his teeth. He was not happy about Kyokaku's calm demeanor. It made him very edgy. Hey, I'll do anything to win a fight, even screw with my opponents, okay, maybe not everything. So could we hurry this up? My idiot brother just passed out and he'll probably need me to piggyback him back to the 4th division. Kyoko said, storing her pipe back in her cleavage. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get this show on the road. This show will be closed on opening night and I'll be the one to bring down the curtain before intermission. Saol unsheathed his sword. Since you're so eager to fight, let's have a little fun. Don't jerk me around, I told you I don't have time to waste with you. Kyokaku told Saol. And that's exactly why I intend to force you to fight me and keep you here for as long as possible so that you can't leave. After all, orders are orders. Saol smirked. Kyokaku just growled. Meanwhile, outside the palace buildings, wandering underneath the false sky towards where she believed Orium to be held, Rukia's footprints left a trail straight to her location. She had been lucky not to have encountered an enemy thus far, but Rukia knew her luck could change any second. As she came to another tower, she put her hand to it and sensed for spirit energy. Not sensing any familiar strains, she prepared to go around the pillar to the next location when she sensed a presence. Rukia barely had time to dodge the incoming strike as she leapt back into the side. Her hand was on her blade and she looked at her attacker. He was a dark-skinned man with a bald head and spines along his head. He had large lips and seemed very intimidating in appearance with how erect he carried himself. Your instincts are very well trained and your reflexes are rather sharp, Soul Reaper. The Arrancar turned to face Rukia. My name is Zamari LaRue. I am the Okan to Espada in a Tremere-sama's Arrancar army. What name do you go by? I am Kukaki Rukia. I am the 6th seat of Squad 13 under Yukatake Teiko. Rukia responded. You are the Kukaki Rukia? Zamari asked. The same one who fabricated the substitute Soul Reaper Kurosaki Ichigo. The same. Rukia responded and drew out her blade. She positioned it by holding the blade with both hands on the hilt, hands up by her chin, blade perpendicular with her shoulder, pointed at her opponent. Kyan taught it to her. He called it the snake stance because of how one could jab and stab at their opponent in rapid succession like a snake lunging at its prey. I see. Zamari said and held his blade horizontally out with one hand so that it ran parallel to his pectorals. You are quite the courageous young woman to come out into the field of battle after such a short period of time of being wounded by the 6th. You're only the 8th, 2 ranks below. I don't think it'll be an issue. Or, perhaps, if you're such a gentleman, you might be willing to let me pass by and reach my friend so that I might leave your fortress in peace. Rukia replied. That I cannot do. Zamari stated. Tremere-sama has asked me to stand guard and eliminate all intruders I come across and eliminate them I shall. This is your end, Soul Reaper. He's coming. Rukia noted to herself. Zamari charged attacking Rukia from the front. She barely blocked the downward powerful, vertical swing. The clash had begun. Loli ran rampant through the halls of Las Noches, frantic and panicked. No, she thought, no, Mistress couldn't have lost. She can't be dead. Not Mia-sama. Mainoli was also running, but considerably farther behind her partner as Loli had taken off the moment she noticed Mia's death, leaving Mainoli to finish helping Sairachi on her own. Loli was understandably upset. Mia had been everything to her. She had laid out a new path for Loli, brought her higher up into the hierarchy. She promised we would always be together. She can't die. I refuse to accept that. Mia-sama. Loli shouted at the top of her lungs. She turned the corner only to walk right into someone. She fell to the ground and rubbed her sore head. Hey! Watch where you are going, you. She looked up to see Talbumasuk standing before her. Loli dropped to her knees in apology. Sumimasen, my lord. I did not realize it was you. Please, forgive my insolence. It's all right, Loli, no harm, no foul. Talbumasuk told her. Thank you, sir. Loli said and got to her feet. Were you looking for me? Talbumasuk asked. Or were you on your way to recover your master's corpse? Corpse? And no, she can't be. Loli was disheartened. Talbumasuk had just confirmed the reality she wished to deny. She can't be, Loli buried her face into her hands and began to cry. She was surprised when Talbumasuk's strong arms found their way around her narrow body. Although he was an evil mastermind, the Arrancar leader was still a chivalrous individual and so couldn't bear to see a woman, one on his side anyway, fall apart in such a manner. More than that though, Mia was his favorite espada because she was the closest to producing a true Soul Reaper and Hollow Fusion. Talbumasuk was disheartened, though he hid it well, at losing such a remarkable and revolutionary soldier. It was unknown to him if Aizen ever saw the potential Mia had within her or if his master even considered the path of power Talbumasuk was heading down. Don't worry, Loli, things are going to be okay. Talbumasuk told the crying Fraxion as he slid his hair through her pigtail. We're going to get your mistress back. Mainoli was coming around the corner and had heard a little of what had been said. Back? But how can one bring back what is dead? Have you forgotten Mainoli? Talbumasuk asked. We currently hold the power of life and death within our very palace under our command. We stole it from the enemy and it is ours to do with as we see fit. Removing one arm from Loli and walking forward with her to place the other around Mainoli, he huddled the two Fraxion under his shoulders. Come, let us go pay our esteemed guest a visit and see what we can't do about reviving your master. Loli and Mainoli looked up with odd faces at Talbumasuk before hugging him with bright and cheery faces and squealing like two fangirls. Tremere-sama, you're the greatest. While this was going on, Kyokaku had engaged in a close-quarter battle with Sail Aporo. She had already determined, based on the fact that he had to seal her Zanpakuto, that he wasn't confident enough to beat her with his own skill level. That being said, Kyokaku was unafraid to fight the Novena barehanded. That is, unless he released his sword. But if she kept on him, he'd never be able to accomplish such. She let drive a right-handed uppercut towards Sail's smug face and missed. She followed up with a left hook, but he dodged that as well, but he had put himself in a position where Kyokaku had the perfect opportunity to put her foot in his stomach, which she took. Sail took the hit and went flying back a bit. Kyokaku readied a Kido and attacked as he flew through the air. Heido 63, Reikoho. Sail smiled that smug grin of his and with his sword slashed and deflected the shot, leaving Kyokaku stunned. You don't get it, do you? I didn't just master the Reishi composition of your Zanpakuto, but everything about you. Your stance, your tactics and your body's Ryutsu composition are being carefully analyzed by the walls of this very room. I know your every move before you even make it. Bullshit. I got you right in the gut. Kyokaku growled. I was faking it. Sail said with a smug expression. You bastard. Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. Sail appeared right behind Kyokaku and cut her across the back. She staggered forward and turned around, fighting through the harsh cut at her mid-back. What part of, I know your moves before you make them don't you get? Sail asked. You can't fight me, you'll only delay the inevitable. Why don't you just give up now and it will save us both a lot of trouble in the long run? If that's the case, then how about we fight you instead? A calm voice called out. The wall nearby to Kyokaku's left suddenly caved in and a rain of arrows smashed into the room. Sail dodged the flurry only for Shinji to appear right behind him and attack with his blade, cutting Sail wide across the chest. The Espada staggered back and clutched his wound as he stared Shinji in the face. Well now, looks like we got here just in time, Kyokaku. Shinji asked her. Kyokaku, not one to admit a problem, simply turned her head to the side and pouted. I would have figured something out, she said, but thanks for showing up. You are. Sail recognized Shinji's appearance. Former captain of Squad 5 and current unofficial commander of the Vizards, Hirako Shinji. Shinji told him. Ah yes, of course I read your profile. I've had plenty of time to study your bio. You may have caught me off guard, but rest assured you won't be around to do much damage to me much longer. Sail said. Oh really? Shinji asked, rubbing his head. Cause that's not how I view this situation at all. Sail looked at Shinji with an interested expression. It's true, I came here with Ichigo and the others so you might have had time, being a researcher and all, to examine my Ryutsu and my techniques. The fact that you know me means that Talbumasuk dug up some records that Aizen has on me. Shinji replied. Don't ask how I know, you didn't exactly build these walls and hallways to be soundproof, and there's just something about you that screams science nerd. Shinji grinned, but, with that said, your knowledge only extends as far as Aizen's about me. After all, I was gone before Talbumasuk's time. Shinji stated. So what's your point? Sail asked, hand on cheek. Aizen once said that I never opened up to him, never told him any information, and I never once tried to get close to him. Such is the case, this also includes, Shinji held up his sword, my Zanpakuto. Sail gasped, realizing what Shinji was talking about. Do you get it now? Aizen didn't know anything about my Zanpakuto, and from your expression I can ascertain that Talbumasuk never dug anything up on me of his own accord. Why would he? He didn't think he'd have to take charge. Lelich was pretty slick about that. Shinji grinned. So, let me show you exactly what you're up against, Mr. Espada. Shinji tilted his wrist forward, hand firm on his Zanpakuto. Collapse, Sakanade. Shinji's Zanpakuto morphed immediately. The pommel became a large ring, allowing Shinji to rotate the blade around and around without actually gripping any part of the weapon itself. The blade itself became white, with 5 holes along the blade. The tip of the sword was slanted and razor-edged in a similar fashion to Urahara's Beniheim. That's certainly an interesting sword. Sail said. Nice huh? Sorry for you, but you can't have it for your experiments. During the brief exchange, Uriah noticed that a strange pink mist was beginning to fill up the area. Just what is this fine layer of mist, and, he sniffed the air, what's with this unnaturally sweet scent? This is quite the pleasing aroma, Sail said. Take a big whiff of the mist. I must say you're a man after my own aesthetics. I don't know whether to be insulted or flattered by that, but go ahead and inhale as much as you'd like. After all, the true power of Sakanade is released when its scent is exuded into the air and inhaled. All at once, Kyokaku, Sail, and Uriah all saw what Shinji was talking about. They were now looking at everything completely upside down. Welcome, Arrancar, Shinji said to Sail, to the inverted world. With Shinji now having gone and made Sail feel like he was on an acid trip, Rukia was continuing to barely being able to stand on par with Zamari as she fought against the dark-skinned Espada and his immense speed. Zamari used Sonido to appear behind Rukia and attacked her, nearly slicing off the top of her head. Rukia used a flash step to dodge. Of course, Zamari was simply feeling out Rukia's limitations. She was only a 6th seat with Vice-Captain class Ryutsu, so he did not think she was on level with him. He figured that only a captain or a captain class fighter could match an Espada. Rukia quickly released her Zanpakuto. Dance, Sode no Shirayuki. Zamari was already behind her and attacked. Rukia turned and barely was able to block. A punch to her face sent her flying back, her nose damaged from the hit. Zamari was reaching the limit of his need to test Rukia and was now proceeding to defeat her completely. He reappeared behind Rukia and cut her along the shoulders before disappearing again and using Sonido to slash her along her chest before following up with a cut along her left upper arm. With 3 distinct wounds and a punch to the face, Rukia wasn't in the best of shape. Zamari stood a far ways away to her left, sword ready to end the battle. This has proved to be a waste of my time. Your reputation is far more boastful than your actual skills. Zamari stated. Farewell, Kukaki Rukia. Zamari charged towards Rukia and she turned to defend herself from the strike when a giant blue blast of energy went sailing towards her and blasted Zamari away as he tumbled along the ground. Rukia turned to see what had caused such a fierce release of energy and saw Chad standing nearby. Sato. Rukia called out to him. It seems to me like you could use some help, Rukia. Chad said to her. Rukia nodded. Your assistance would be appreciated. That Arrancar is one of the Espada. I see. Chad said with both arms all set and ready to go. Zamari got up and looked at Chad. The Espada was bleeding a little from his forehead was scuffed up along his right arm. That was quite a fierce blow that you caught me rather well off guard. Your Ryutsu is so strange I mistook you for a hollow. What are you and what is your name? Zamari asked Chad. I'm Sato Yasutura, I'm human. Chad responded. Rukia tells me you're an Espada. I am. I am Zamari Laru. Soy Okantat Espada. Zamari responded. I see. Chad replied. So he's 2 levels higher than that Yami guy from before. My time in the Soul Society has taught me that 2 levels can make a lot of difference, but I've gotten a lot stronger since I went up against Yami. With Rukia here, the 2 of us should be more than a match for this guy. You are one of the warriors who attempted to free Miss Kukaki there from the Soul Society some time ago, correct? Zamari asked. That's correct. Chad responded. I see, then I shall not hold back. Sato Yasutura, Kukaki Rukia, prepare for the full extent of my capabilities as one of a Tremere-sama's Espada. Zamari stated and attacked. At this same time, a few towers to the west, Tatsuki and Luppy were engaged in a heated battle. And Luppy, so far, was having a rather rough time. While hovering in the air, Tatsuki crossed her arms over her body and sent 2 large spheres of flame towards Luppy. They weren't aimed at him, but they homed in on him. He made to deflect them with his extra arms, but they were singed and cut off in the process as the spheres exploded on contact. Tatsuki tore towards Luppy using Kane Ryu, but, for some reason, she wasn't calling her attacks to use them. Despite this, they were still just as deadly. Frantically Luppy swatted Tatsuki away. He succeeded and slammed her harshly into the wall, but his arm caught fire and disintegrated as a result. You're not normal. Luppy shouted at Tatsuki as he looked at her from up high as she came up from the ground. She rose triumphantly into the air as fire seemed to coat her entire body, except for her head, without actually burning it. What the hell are you? Request of response denied. Target has been analyzed to be extremely dangerous. Tatsuki spoke, her voice still distorted by her power. The flames around her chest intensified and her hands glowed. Burn into flames. Tatsuki shouted as she tucked her knees in, clapped her hands together, flapped her wings back and stuck her back out. The head of a dragon, completely on fire, erupted towards Luppy and sent him careening through the wall into another room. This room was much more spacious. It was lined with beige walls and red tile flooring and was the size of the inbound zone of a soccer field. Tatsuki charged towards Luppy, who was now down to a mere 2 extra arms. He used Sonido to get behind her and fired a Zero at point blank. Tatsuki went careening into the ground like a falling star and ground into the dirt. Seething with anger, though badly damaged from the fall, Tatsuki whipped around and prepared to face off against Luppy once again. The flames around her body intensified and Tatsuki's wings, tail, and claws now seemed to be completely made of flame, though the flames were just another layer of defense around the already scaled armor. Her Ryutsu made the floor beneath her cave in. You die. From her position Tatsuki threw a punch. The sheer magnitude of her Ryotsu blew past Luppy and scorched away the rest of his resurrection. In her out-of-control state, though she did not have much stamina or much of a defense, the more damage she took the stronger she became. Right before her stamina was empty Tatsuki was so strong that she could stand on par with some of the stronger captains in terms of Ryotsu provided they weren't using Bankai. However, at that point a fierce chop to the back of her head would be enough to knock her out, provided one could get around her sea of flame that surrounded her. No human could be this strong. You. What are you? Luppy shouted at Tatsuki only to be grabbed around the throat. He could slowly feel his body sweat and burn, and oh did it burn. Threat analysis indicates target is no longer a threat. Commencing requested response. Tatsuki said with her distorted voice and then said to Luppy, I am she that sleeps, but now awakes. Tatsuki's reptilian eyes were also now on fire. I am the Uncritter, the she-devil that burns all that stands in her way. Luppy could see that his body was starting to catch fire. He whimpered as Tatsuki continued to talk. I am the deity of what is left behind after the burning blaze. I am Kaibun, avatar of fiery death. Tatsuki's out-of-control state thought of itself as another entity entirely. It had to, in its mind, since such actions were completely unlike Tatsuki at all. Using Tatsuki's hand, Kaibun squeezed Luppy's throat tighter and then set him on fire. Luppy screamed as he burned brightly like the shamash on a menorah. His screams only served to cause Kaibun to smirk as she, though a different persona within Tatsuki's mind, only coming out when Tatsuki remained in her true form for too long. Kaibun was, in fact, female watched. When Luppy was completely engulfed in her fire, Kaibun spoke again. You're finished. Still on fire, Kaibun let go of Luppy's neck and grabbed his head with her claw, piercing the nails into his cranium, digging her middle and ring fingers into his eyes, causing him to scream louder. Have a nice death, Privarin. Kaibun shouted and sent Luppy down like a comet towards the ground. He disintegrated, before he reached the ground, screaming all the way. Kaibun dropped quickly to the ground, caving in the floor. I feel so alive. She exasperated. So, you are the disturbance I sensed then? A voice asked from behind Kaibun. Kaibun turned. She saw a female Arrancar dressed in a stripped white uniform with a blade with a four-pointed star guard in a green scabbard at her left side. The Arrancar had blue-green hair and a skull mask atop her head. She could sense the max Ryotsu from deep within the creature's body. Target threat level identified. Senses indicate the target is extremely dangerous, proceeding with more caution than previously. Her opponent, Espada number 5, Neliel 2, looked at her opponent and studied her. I see, you are a being gone out of control, a being focused only on destruction. How sad. Neliel's eyes seemed to be filled with pity. Target is arrogant and pities me. Attempting to rectify. Kaibun stated. Neliel used a simple step of Sonido. Kaibun didn't even see her draw her sword and was only aware when Neliel passed by her. A beast such as you could never hope to defeat someone like me. Neliel said as she looked back at Kaibun, who was slowly reverting back to letting Tatsuki have control. I will not kill you. I will only take the life of one that I deem a warrior. Neliel clicked her blade into its sheath, causing Tatsuki to receive a near-fatal wound up along her abdomen going up to her shoulder. Neliel managed to make the wound wide enough so that Tatsuki would pass out, but shallow enough so that wouldn't kill her. Still, if Tatsuki lay there and wait for too long, she would eventually expire. She was only human after all. Neliel fastened her blade back at her hip side and used Sonido to exit. Orium immediately sensed when her friend took a harsh blow and felt Ichigo's Ryotsu drain away not soon after, as he had been defeated by Ulquiorra. Orium ran for the door and began pounding on it. Let me out. She cried. Let me out of here. Please let me out. Please. With each passing exclamation, Orium began to become more and more prone to tears and eventually did break down onto her knees and cry. Let me out, oh please. Orium sobbed. I have to get out, I can't take Chan, Kurosaki-kun, Dashite. Orium broke down and sobbed against the door. She was sobbing for a good 5 minutes before the door slid open. Orium fell onto the floor. It was if the opening had not changed her attitude and she crawled into a fetal position and continued to cry. "Ah, it seems Ulquiorra's pet broke," Loli said with a smug grin on her face. Orium lifted her head up from off the ground and looked up to see Loli, Mainoli, and Talbumasuk all standing in front of her. "On your feet, Miss Inu," Talbumasuk told her. Orium did so wordlessly. "I won't beat around the bush. I am taking you so that you can revive one of my fallen comrades. Is that understood?" She knew the position she was in. She knew what was being asked of her was not unreasonable, but for a moment, Orium felt that, having lost her best friend and her crush, that she almost didn't have a reason to live. "No," she said softly. Talbumasuk heard her. Defiance from her especially was something he did not need. He lifted his right hand and with the back of it smacked Orium right across the face. The human teen nearly went tumbling back to the ground. "You don't seem to understand the position you are in. You are only alive so that I may make use of your power. Defy me, and I will kill you, understand?" Talbumasuk asked her. Orium didn't say anything, she just stared at the floor with her sore cheek throbbing. Talbumasuk looked at her, seeing that her willpower was all but drained. "She's useless like this." He was rather dismayed. However, what he perceived as luck, smiled upon him as Grimjoe came walking down the hall. "Ah, the eternal rival appears." Talbumasuk's mind hatched a plan. However, he was completely and utterly appalled when, despite the fact that he, Loli and Mainoli were standing in front of an open door, Grimjoe stood in front of the wall not more than a meter away from them and ballad it to bits. Talbumasuk growled, glared and pointed at the open door with his index finger. "The door is right here." He grit his teeth. "Yeah, well, you standing in front of it completely ruins the entrance," Grimjoe told him. Talbumasuk sighed and gripped his hair as he wondered if he gave Grimjoe too much credit. He still wasn't used to this whole perceive an individual's behavior business. "What is it you want, Grimjoe?" "I want to borrow the girl for a while. Kurosaki and I have some unfinished business and Ulquiorra completely screwed me," Grimjoe shouted. "And in the end it's just as I figured." Talbumasuk smirked, releasing the tension in his hand and running it through his wild black hair. "Sure, go right ahead, be my guest." Waloli was speechless. "But, Tremere-sama, what about Mia-sama?" Mainoli gaped. "Miss Inu is useless as she is now. She has lost all will to do much of anything except mope. If my perception of the facts is correct, then letting Grimjoe borrow her is exactly what is required for her to get back on her feet," Talbumasuk stated. "Do have fun while you are out fighting Grimjoe," Talbumasuk said to him. "I'll drop by later to pick up Miss Inu when you're done. Ladies, let's go," Talbumasuk told them. "Hi." The two Fraxion followed Talbumasuk down the other end of the corridor. "I'll let Grimjoe have his fun," Talbumasuk mused to himself. As Aizen-sensei once said, the wise tyrant makes use of the wants of his subordinates and incorporates their actions into his own plans. That said, I do have a plan B in case Grimjoe does fail and Orium is recovered by my enemies. Hirako Shinji, I silently thank you for your passive chivalry in allowing my member of the Privaran Espada that you fought to live. In doing so you have ensured that, no matter what happens, so long as Sairachi acts accordingly, I will not lose my precious Septima. Karakura Town. That's all for today, class. Please remember to do your homework and I will see you tomorrow. So iPhone said and dismissed her class. She returned to her apartment feeling depressed and collapsed upon the couch. What's wrong, B? You seem depressed. Yuriuki said in cat form as she hopped up onto So iPhone's back and made herself comfortable. So iPhone didn't respond, all she could think about was what happened yesterday. You two should go to Kisuk's. What's this you stuff, aren't you coming with us, sensei? I cannot. I am a teacher. My place is here. I said that, but, that's not true at all. Why do I always bow my head to authority? Whether it's Yuriuki-sama's or whomever is in charge, I never act if it means going against the laws or rules set in place in my environment. So iPhone mused to herself. I know what this is about. You feel guilty about letting Ichigo and the others go off alone. If that's how you feel, it's not too late, you can still go after them. Yuruaki stated. But my class. So iPhone mumbled. Yuruaki hopped onto the coffee table. You don't need to worry about that. I will watch your students for you. You just go and help the ones playing hooky. In the next instant So iPhone was hugging Yuruaki tightly to her. Thank you Yuruaki-sama. She squealed. So iPhone can't breathe. Yuruaki gasped from being hugged so tight. Ah. So iPhone put Yuruaki back on the coffee table and smoothed out her fur. My apologies Yuruaki-sama. It's quite alright. Your reaction is understandable. However, you'd had best get to Kisuke as soon as possible if you intend to go to Hueco Mundo. So iPhone nodded in understanding. She headed for the door and began heading for the Urahara shop at top speed. She flung open the door to the shop and announced, Kisuke. You're sending me to Hueco Mundo and I won't take no for an answer. She noticed that no one answered, but also noticed that the tile that covered Urahara's underground facility was left uncovered. Honestly that idiot. So iPhone said. She began her descent down the ladder and pulled the covering tile over herself. When she was low enough she jumped down and called out again. Kisuke. Are you down here? I figured you'd show up. That's why I left the tile uncovered. So iPhone recognized the voice behind her. She turned to see the captain of Squad 10 staring her in the face. Lelich. The violet-eyed captain smirked. Glad to have you aboard the rescue operation. He said with a smile. Rescue operation? So iPhone asked blinking. Lelich and I aren't the only ones here. Yes, operation. So iPhone turned around again to see the 3rd Division captain sitting on a large rock. Nice to know you're joining us. Hisuna. So iPhone recognized her. Wait, what are you two doing here? I thought the Soul Society wasn't getting involved. Technically we're not. Like I said, this is a recovery OP. Lelich said with a sly grin. I'm going to recover my subordinate Shiba Kyokaku and Hisuna is going out to save her sister from doing something stupid. And of course we also brought along a guide since we don't know the terrain. Guide. So iPhone said, confused. I see, so the former executive militia commander will be joining us. So iPhone turned around to see the captain of the 9th Division walking up behind her. Tyson. She recognized him. Kaname knows the terrain of Las Noches well since I had him act as a double agent for Aizen for so long. Lelich stated. That is superficial bullcrap. So iPhone smirked. You don't honestly expect me to believe that the head captain doesn't know what you're all really up to, right? Of course we don't, I'm sure he knows full well, but he understands that sending captains is his only choice of action. Hisuna stated. It's a loophole, but it's a legal loophole. Tyson stated. So why are you all just standing around? So iPhone asked. Waiting for Kisuke. Lelich stating. He's going to open the Garganta so that we can charge into Hueco Mundo without Gentei Kaijo. Our enemies are Espada. It's necessary if we want to be prepared. Lelich told her. So iPhone nodded and understood. The familiar sound of a cane and clogs came clomping up the pathway. It's all set Lelich. Urahara said and then saw So iPhone. Miss So iPhone, you decided to join us after all. I must say I'm happy to see you. So iPhone just gave Kisuke a cool glance. Nice to see you too Kisuke. Everything's as it should be. Lelich asked Urahara in confirmation. Everything except the passengers. Urahara said. Very funny. Hisuna said, jumping down. I was being serious. Urahara said putting a hand on his hat. So iPhone-san, do you really intend to go into enemy territory still wearing your special Jigai? Well. So iPhone realized that she was wearing the Jigai that Urahara had supplied her with 100 years ago. It had been necessary up to this point, especially when she went to Soul Society. That was a rescue mission and so iPhone had not wanted to draw unnecessary attention to herself or the others, so being able to mask her riot so was a necessity. The upside was that it made assassinations much easier as she was much less detectable. The downside was that it restricted her Ryutsu limit by a fourth of what the Gentai Kaijo restricted, and it was difficult just to get up to that point as it would breach the limits of the Jigai itself. However, So iPhone knew that having any sort of restriction could easily get her killed. She looked fiercely at Kisuke. "Hit me," she said. "As you wish," Urahara said and bunked his cane into So iPhone's forehead. She was in a Shiakusho now. She hadn't worn one in a long time. Unlike the Shiakusho of Lelouch or Tosin, there were no shoulders on So iPhone's Kosid or Shitajai. "Let's go then," Lelouch said. "Hold on, one last thing," So iPhone said, and then grabbed the ring that held together the cloth that braided her hair on the left side of her body and unhooked it before discarding it to the ground. She then did the same to her right ring and then grabbed the cloth of her braids and unraveled it, letting her hair cascade down her back. "Now let's go," So iPhone said. "Any particular reason for the sudden hairstyle change?" Hisuna asked. "It was necessary," So iPhone responded and subconsciously glanced at Urahara, who understood why she did it. "Let's go then, we don't have any more time to waste," Lelouch said. And with that, one by one, he and the others formed up in front of the Garganta. Urahara opened it and everyone jumped inside and made their way to Hueco Mundo. To be continued. Check the description for the links to the author.